Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome everybody to the June 6, 2023 Board of County Commissioners meeting for Indian River County. And we will start off with a moment of silent reflection for our first responders and members of the armed forces, then followed by an invocation by my friend and everybody's friend, the Reverend Jack Deal, and then a pledge of allegiance led by Commissioner Darrell Lohr. So if everybody would please rise.
Oh Lord, we come this morning and are thankful for this beautiful little corner of your creation that we all call home. We give you thanks for these commissioners who bring their many and varied gifts and experience to this place. We give you thanks for our first responders and those in the armed services who serve and protect us. We also give you thanks today for Sergeant Rem Snyder and for Kobe on their retirement and the service they'd offered to this community. We are grateful for all of these blessings that we experience here in this place. But also in these times where polarization and division often rear its ugly head, where fear and hate often have the day, help us to continue to be a people and a place where wisdom and understanding, where courage and a spirit of cooperation all have the final word in our discussions, in our for our conservation, and for the good of all your people. We give you thanks and ask your blessing. Amen.
Thank you. Please join me in the pledge of the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Jack.
Thank you, guys. God bless you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I would like to remind everybody today what today is a day of significance. In June 6, 1944, 160,000 United States troops stormed Normandy Beach on the coast of France. 160,000 total with the Allied forces, 2,500 Americans died, over 5,000 were wounded, and some were over there in the graves in France. So that was the change of the World War II and probably changed the world as we know it today. So I just wanted to remind everybody today, don't forget today is D-Day. All right, with that, Commissioners, any additions, deletions to the agenda or emergency items? I would like to move up item 13A, the opioid settlement. Judge Benz is here. We can get her back to work, and also emergency services 15A, so we can get Chief Johnson back to work. So with that, any other changes?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move 14A1, that's your matter regarding tourist tax, to follow 12F1, which is also regarding tourist tax, to discuss tourist tax combined.
Okay, we can do that.
And if there are no other changes, I'll move to approve
Okay.
as amended.
All right, any further changes, additions, or deletions?
Second.
Who first? Who made the motion? You did, okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a motion and a second to amend the agenda as noted. Anybody from the public wish to comment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. All right. This will be after the consent also, I should have said it. We'll do that after the consent agenda. All right, next, moving on to proclamations and presentations. Presentation and proclamation honoring Brian Remsnyder on his retirement from the Indian River County Sheriff's Department. This will be presented by Commissioner Fleischer. So, Brian, you and everybody else, come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to present this proclamation. Before I begin, I just want to say, Brian, thank you so much for your dedicated service and your commitment to God, country, the county, the good people of this county. We all slept better while you were working, or your partner was working. You were at the end of the leash. With that, you know, when I first heard that you were retiring, you told me you were retiring, I said, he's far too young. You're 10 years my junior. And we started together. So let's begin at the beginning. It was, I believe it was early 1997. This Yankee met a former Yankee. And he wasn't born up north. He actually played ball for the Yankee organization. And we appreciate that. We got together. We're in the academy and LE 76. And Brian, thank you for your orientation to Florida living. You were very encouraging and helpful, and I needed some direction and guidance and orientation, and you provided that in a very kind and humble way. But during the academy, it was not easy. It's an unpaid academy, and we did not have the opportunity to be sponsored. So basically, we were living hand to hand and then some. And I remember just about 3 weeks short of graduation, when we didn't know if we were getting hired, you said, well, 2 weeks is all I got. I said, no, we have 3 weeks, and we have the FDLE exam. And you said, well, yeah, that's for that, but I got about 2 weeks left of finances. We were kind of foraging, but we made it, didn't we? And a fine graduate you were, and you and your family, the commitment to Indian River County was greatly appreciated as you started in patrol, and you had this, I don't know, this idea about you wanted to be with the dogs. You wanted to be a canine deputy. And I remember on midweek, Wednesdays and Saturdays, you'd be putting on the bite suit, and I said, yeah, you're going to get hurt. That dog's been biting you. And you say, I know, but I enjoy it, and it's the only way to get through it is to train with them. And I remember you had a couple of battle scars, too. But thank you for that. And then you moved on, and you succeeded. After some years in patrol, you moved on to K-9. And I recall I was with Sheriff Raymond on an unrelated call. We were in the car, and we just listened to radio traffic as we were coming back from something, and heard you responding, 1018, and you could hear in the background, and, well, Roy was on the phone. He was on the Nextel at the time. We all remember them, right? And he's on the Nextel, he's talking, and I pull over, and he says, gets off the phone, and he says, what are we doing? I said, well, K-9's en route to a priority call. It's running 1018. I don't know if we're going to the hospital or the jail. So we were kind of stationed in between. He says, well, who is it? I said, it's Rimschneider. He said, we'll be all right. Now, I don't know if his confidence in your response, I don't remember whether the confidence was about you or your partner. But let's say this, that if it was about you, because you have trained more canines and have supervised more canines and handled more canines than just about anybody. Well, there's one guy there, it's Kent Campbell. He's done quite a bit of training too. But nonetheless, it went without incident, and we were just back home. Brian, I can't say enough. Collectively, between you, 25 years, yeah, I feel a little old. 25 years of commitment. Kathleen, 40 years of commitment. This family has contributed, dedicated over 65 years of service to the good people of Indian River County. And wait a minute, Sheriff, I appreciate it. I was also going to include Logan. Thank you, though. Added with Logan's years of service and every canine that you trained and handled, you're probably the first family in Indian River County to have committed well over 100 years of service to our county for safety and security. And I want to just say simply, thank you. It's a whole lot of work. You've had to raise a family while you're doing this, those call-outs in the middle of the night. I just can't say enough. You're one great guy. And a great friend. Let me proceed with the proclamation, because it's happening. This proclamation is honoring Brian Rimschneider on his retirement from the Indian River County Sheriff's Office. Whereas Brian Rimschneider is retiring from the Indian River County Sheriff's Office effective May 25th, 2023. And whereas Brian began his law enforcement career in 1998 and has served with distinction for 25 years. And whereas during the law enforcement career, Brian has served in many capacities, including deputy, canine deputy, and the supervisory rank of sergeant in road patrol and canine. Whereas over his tenure, Brian received many acknowledgments and commendations for his efforts, including Exceptional Duty Award, Honorable Service, Instructor Award, Life-Saving Award, and Law Enforcement Deputy of the Year. And whereas Brian has worked diligently under the sheriffs, for sheriffs, to protect and serve the public and the citizens of Indian River County and the state of Florida. Whereas Brian has been dedicated to his work and greatly appreciated by Sheriff Flowers and those who have served and had the honor to serving with him. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County that the board acknowledges the contributions that Brian Rimschneider has made to the citizens of Indian River County during his successful law enforcement career and wish him a happy and prosperous retirement. Duly adopted this 6th day of June, 2023, and signed by all 5 county commissioners. Brian, it's with great honor that we present this proclamation, and it's customary now that we probably hear a few kind words, and I remind you that you're in front of 2 of your former bosses.
I'm truly honored. I'm a blessed man for more than one reason. I've got an amazing family that's been nothing but support through this whole process, and Joe has seen it firsthand, side by side in the academy with me, and what an awesome, phenomenal support group that I have, especially on those call-out issues and things like that. I spent a lot more time away from home than I did with them, and I missed a lot on their growing up, and that's something you can't get back. But I'm very, very proud of what they've developed into. You know, I'm very, very fortunate to have done what I've done over my career. Sheriff, I'm very, very thankful that you gave me the opportunity to supervise the K-9 unit. It's been my passion, you know, the entire career that I've had. And, you know, I had the opportunity to work 6 dogs while I'm here, and you're right. We're ready to hand over the torch to the next generation of handlers, but I'm also blessed with the opportunity to be able to come back and train some of those new teams. So I'm not going away 100% in the fact that at least I'll have my hand in it as far as the training aspect, and for as long as they'll have me. So there's a lot I could say. I'll tell you what, one thing else I'm really proud of is what Mr. Ehrman mentioned is my grandfather was part of that D-Day process. So very honored to this to happen on this day and honoring him as well. So I'm glad you brought that up. It means a lot to me and my family, and should to everybody sitting in here. So I know you got other business to attend to today. I can't thank you guys enough. I can't thank the people that came here to support me for this. I'm just blessed to serve this community as long as I've had, and has its ups and downs and things like that, and takes its toll on you mental health wise, and that's something that I really would hope that you guys recognize. I know we recognize it now, and and I've lost 3 guys this year in the calendar year alone that I worked with by their own hand, and it's a legitimate issue. So I'm also want to stay on board as far as what our STAR team does and helpful with that as well. So anyway, I guess I'll step aside, but God bless you guys. Thank you so much for this recognition this morning, and on to the next chapter. So thank you.
Brian, I know that you're going to handle retirement well. Can you tell us how Kobe's handling retirement?
You know what? He's not doing bad at all, you know? Being out of the house is okay, but yeah, he curls up at the end of the bed and knows what time he's supposed to eat, and that's about it. Goes outside. So I'm waiting on him hand and foot, but rightfully so, you know? And Sheriff Lohr, I appreciate, when we retired him, that I got to keep him, and that's something that every one of the sheriffs have done, is being able to retire our dogs to our own families, because they've taken care of us and brought us home all those years. You better believe we're going to take care of them in their later years. So, yeah, we kind of look a little alike now with the our beards,
Yeah, he is in good shape.
yeah. Oh no, he is. Actually, he's probably in better shape than I am. We have our aches and pains and have to take our meds to be able to walk upright, but we're doing all right. So I appreciate that.
Mr. Flusher, would you be willing to do a demonstration with the dog?
I fortunately or unfortunately, I did have the opportunity to do a demonstration, and they did give me the benefit of having a sleeve on my arm, which I'm very grateful and appreciative, and my family. There's a lot of people that are very happy happy for Brian, but there's a few out there, as far as the citizens, there's a few that are really happy that Brian's retiring. Now that you brought that up.
Sheriff?
I just want to say thank you guys for taking the time to recognize our wonderful employees and for making time for us on your agenda. Brian is an incredible man, human, and just an incredible canine handler, trainer. He's done an amazing job for our agency, and he's certainly going to be missed. As he mentioned, he is going to stay on and help us with some training. And additionally, his current partner, Remy, who bears his namesake, will continue on in service. So Kobe is retired at home, but Remy is continuing to work. So we're excited about that, and we're certainly grateful for him and his entire family. So thank you guys.
I'm sure there's got to be somebody else back there that wants to say something in that crowd of people.
One of our traditions with K9, or one of our statements, was that to lead is our tradition. And Brian has epitomized that, both with his training abilities, his humanity, his Christian beliefs, and he's done an excellent job for this community. And his training, leadership will resonate through this county, through the K9 unit for years to come. And I appreciate his efforts over the years.
Anybody else?
I just want to mention real quick,
ahead.
that man right there is my mentor.
Yeah.
What a phenomenal job he does at the sheriff's office, and I got my start because he gave me the opportunity to be able to come out and be a part of this, and he is the epitome of what leadership is at our agency, and I'm proud of that for him too. So.
Anybody else? Commissioner Lohr?
Great. Well, thank you and congratulations, Brian, to all of your hard work. I always worked with Brian, God-fearing man. I wish him nothing but the best. He and Kathleen did a fantastic job, as already mentioned. So thank you very much, Brian, and God bless you.
Madam Vice Chairman?
I think it's already been said, but thank you so much and congratulations. Enjoy it.
Commissioner Moss?
Appreciate your service and also that of your family, and thank you for mentioning that. It's beautifully said.
Counselor?
I just want to thank the sergeant, but also follow up on something that Sheriff Flowers said, which is I think it's really great that we allow the men and women of our other agencies to come forward and present their really amazing employees so that our public gets to see other folks just besides the commission, the folks who work directly for the Board of County Commissioners. So it gives us an opportunity to say thank you for your service and for your support of our community. So thank you, sir.
Mr. Administrator.
Brian, I want to thank you for your long, distinguished career. As a spouse of a law enforcement officer, I want to thank the family for your support and commitment to Brian. We appreciate all that you've done for the community. Good luck in your retirement. Godspeed.
Brian, I think they've all said it, but on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners and everybody, all the citizens in Edinburgh County, we definitely appreciate your dedicated service, especially in the specialty of directing canines. Dogs are near and dear to my heart too, and it's definitely you've done a great job, and congratulations, and enjoy your next chapter, like you said. So thanks so much.
You can give it to him.
Yeah, how's Kobe going to get in the picture?
How about the rest of the team?
Commissioner Fleischer, that might be a first.
It was a special request.
That's right, but that might be a first picture of the
Canine. That was good.
Thank you,
I don't
Brian.
know, he could ventriloquist too.
Sir. Go get it, Brian.
All right, buddy.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah?
Super.
I'm a glorified chauffeur anyway, so.
I'll talk to you at 2.
What?
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Yep. Mm. Mm.
So Commissioner Fleischer, that might be a first. The dog actually got into the picture in the commission chambers.
Well, once again, when we were talking about, what time we had to be here and what we had to do, the commitment for the proclamation, it was just natural that he
I
would
would say it's very appropriate.
be with Kobe.
Absolutely.
And I said, well, you bring Kobe along. He said, did we do that?
That's good. No, it's
So he's been everywhere else. He's been in a lot of buildings, and he's been on the road, and he's been in a lot of homes, or some homes that he was invited, some that he was not so invited. But it was very fitting. So thank you for the opportunity and your indulgence to have a very
very,
first
very
canine.
appropriate.
Yes.
No doubt. Thank you. All right. We move on to item 6, approval of minutes, the regular meeting for April 4th, 2023, and the regular meeting of April 18th, 2023.
Move approval both.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Adams. Anybody from the audience wish to comment on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes 5-0. Item 7, informational items from staff, commissioners not requiring board action. 7A, informational report designating May 25th, 2023 as Family Abduction Awareness Days. There was a proclamation signed by all 5 county commissioners, and I believe it was forwarded to the appropriate person. Kim, is that correct? Yeah, okay, thank you. So yes, thank you for that. This is very important. It is, we all know somebody that has experienced that or heard a lot about it. Item 7C, proclamation honoring Sharon Marie Franks on her retirement from Indian River County Board of County Commissioners, Animal Control Department of Emergency Services. 23 years of service for Sharon. Her family's been here a long time. I believe they're moving to Tennessee. And if you didn't know, Candace that works down in community development, that's her daughter. So Candace is still here, but we're still, so we still have part of the Franks family here. Dave, any further comment on that or anything? She's already moved to Georgia. I'm sure you're gonna miss her. She was a staple there at the Animal Control for sure. All right, 7D, District 3 appointee for the Planning and Zoning. Well, if you go to 7H, you'll see Curtis Carpenter resigned he was my original appointee. His business and schedule has not allowed him to serve anymore. So, and actually on the next one, on 7E, my nominee that was original nominee for the ELAP committee, Calvin Rames, is now, I'm going to place him on the Planning and Zoning. And the District 3 appointee for the ELAP will be Danny Bott. Danny is a really good guy. He's lived here all his life. For some of you that may remember, there's not too many people here, but the former golf pro at Dodger Pines, Roger Bott, was his dad. And so Danny worked at Dodger Pines for years as a young kid. He's born and raised here, but he works for Prudential Life Insurance, but he's in their land acquisition department. They buy working farms like tree farms and other type farms and subsidize them and basically, I guess, make money off of them. So I think he'll be a really good appointee, being a lifetime resident, having that kind of background with that. And next I will go to 7F for the county venue calendar. And I know coming up on the 17th of June, the Hurricane Preparedness Expo out at the Indian River County Fairgrounds from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's free for everybody who wants to attend, being we're upon that great time of the year that's so joyous and we all enjoy it with the hurricane season. It'd be a good thing for folks to attend. And it's free lunch for the first 1,000 attendees. And then also that same day is the Mary Snyder Annual Golf Tournament. It's, again, out at Sand Ridge. It'll be a full slate of golfers. 2 golf courses will be used. It's a huge event for the Vietnam Veterans Association to be out there. And I know that Mr. Zito and myself will be out there playing and participating. I know Commissioner Fleischer will be there to give everybody their good wishes at the beginning, even though he doesn't play. But as we know, it's a big event, and it's very well attended, and looking forward to it.
They'll also
All right, anything else on that?
Well, they'll be having lunch. There's going to be a whole lot of food over at the fairgrounds because they'll be having their lunch there as well.
Right, actually, when Mike says we're having the golf tournament and then we're feeding all the golfers, they're feeding all the golfers over at the expo building in the fairgrounds. So that'll push 250 people over there to the expo alone. So it should be a good thing.
Busy day.
So it'll be a big day. So, any further questions or any other items? All right, seeing none, let's move on to the consent agenda. Commissioners, anybody wish to talk about or pull from the consent? Must not be. I'll take that as a no. Anybody from the audience wish to pull anything from the consent agenda for further reckoning? Seeing none, I'll entertain a
Move
motion.
approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Adams. Anybody from the audience wish to comment on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. All right, now moving on to item 13. 13, County Attorney Matter 13A, opioid settlement spending plan. Counselor.
Thank you very much. On April 4th, after a discussion on the opioid settlements, the board directed the county attorney's office to work with Commissioner Lohr as a liaison to focus on using settlement proceeds on our alternative court programs such as Veterans Court, Drug Court, Mental Health Court. And then also to coordinate with some of our sister agencies, such as the hospital district, who was present at that meeting. Since that time, Commissioner Lohr and myself met with Judge Cox, Judge Stone, and Judge Mentz. The judges recommend that we use the proceeds for assessments, treatment, testing, and then wraparound services, and in conjunction with our alternative courts. And then the hospital district responded that they were in full support of utilizing the opioid settlement funds in that direction. County Attorney's Office simply just recommends that the board approve the proposed plan of concept with the money, again, for assessments, treatment, testing, and wraparound services associated with their alternative courts. And just want to thank all the judges who met with us, Judge Mentz, Judge Cox, and Judge Stone, to take the time to meet with us to talk about this issue. I want to thank Commissioner Lohr for diving in and also being of assistance, and also the hospital district for their support. And I want to thank Judge Mentz as well for being here today, and she is here, I assume, if there are any other additional questions or comments, or if I have unfortunately taken my item off track. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Your Honor.
I just want to thank the commission for recognizing that the alternative courts are a good use of this money that we are all receiving. The nice thing about this is that it's not limited to one of our courts. We'll be able to spread this money out amongst all of our alternative courts, which are in desperate need of this money. So I want to thank the commission for, again, your continued support of all of our alternative courts.
Commissioner Lohr.
And thank you, Chair. It was an honor to meet with the judges and Mr. Reingold. And I will tell you that the problem-solving courts that originated many years ago, particularly Mental Health Court, which was January of 2015, has been instrumental in our community. And with that, I would move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Lohr, second by Commissioner Fleischer. Anybody from the public wish to comment on the motion? Bob? Just name and address, please. You know the drill.
Yes, Bob McParland, City of Sebastian. Sorry, I had hernia surgery the other week, so I'm just a little slow. But again, this opioid settlement, this is pennies compared to the damage that it has done throughout our community. And it has orphaned children, unfortunately. And I know the judge will do a fantastic job with it in the court. But again, this is very small amount of money to handle this problem that really hit us upside the head, and it's ravaged this community. And I know Judge Mentz will put it to good use, but I wish it was a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment?
Mr. Chair, I just want to take the liberty to once again thank and commend Judge Mentz in the way these courts are conducted. I guess I understand you're a judge, but the way you deliver, I would invite the public to see and witness the amount of relationship that you have with each and every one of these individuals, and the great success in the reduction of recidivism and on dependency, and why the very reason why they're before you. It is absolutely encouraging for the entire system to actually see a graduation in your court. And I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Lohr, second by Commissioner Fleischer. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Judge. All right, let's see. Now we're moving on to 15. 15A, Emergency Services District. 15A1, approval of Emergency Service District minutes meeting of November 8th, 2022. 15A2, approval of Emergency Service District meeting minutes of December 13th, 2023. 15A3, approval of Emergency Services District meeting minutes of January 17th, 2023. 15A4, approval of Emergency Service District meeting minutes of February 21st, 2023.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Lohr. Anybody from the public wish to comment on the motion? Seeing none, Commissioners, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. 15A5, approval of third renewal of Third Amendment of property lease for temporary location of Fire Station Number 7. Chief Johnson.
Good morning. We hope this is the last one for this location. The progress on new Station 7 is slow, but it's going forward. So hopefully we can get it done within a year. If not, we'll be back for hopefully just one additional. So
When do we expect construction to start?
we're just getting the permits through the water control districts to cross their canal now. So we're thinking we should be moving dirt for the utilities this summer, crossing our fingers.
Let me interject another question. How are we coming on 15?
We're looking for property currently. The property that we had originally identified was contingent on quite a few other things going on, and it hasn't worked out. It's just that there's no end in sight for that, so we're looking for new property.
Good. Mr. Administrator, anything you need to add?
Just to reiterate what the chief said, we've talked about Station 15, and it's just a matter of there was a development that was proposed. Has not progressed forward, and therefore the dedication of property for that station location is not in play at this point in time.
Okay, thanks. All right, Commissioners, I'll entertain a motion.
I just want to, and Chief, just for the record, all of the funding for Station 7 and 15 is encumbered for the development of the two buildings, correct?
Yes, it's
So all we're waiting on is property.
property and permits.
With that, I hope that, I mean, I like to see you every day, but I hope that we're not back next year to ask that same question.
Me too.
I hope that this is the final one, because the men and women deserve to be out of the big
Yes,
house.
the trailers are getting quite worn. We're throwing a lot of money into them to keep them up to date, so.
Yeah, the modular has been in maintenance as well,
Very much so.
so let's hope that we can find that if we need some real estate assistance. Thank you, Chief. Mr. Chair, with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion by Commissioner Fleischer. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Commissioner Moss. Anybody from the public wish to comment on the motion? Seeing none, Commissioners, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
All right. All right, moving back to the beginning. Done the consent. All right, I guess we're moving on to item 10. And this will be a public hearing, 10A1. Public hearing to consider an ordinance amending the Children's Services Advisory Committee membership requirements. And this is legislative in nature. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Counselor.
Thank you. On May 16th, the board directed the county attorney's office to draft an ordinance, changing the ordinance code that would allow for the superintendent of the school board to be able to appoint a designee to attend the Children's Services Advisory Committee meetings in the event the superintendent was not able to attend. County attorney's office has drafted that ordinance. It's presented to you today, and we have scheduled this for a public hearing on this matter today. So the county attorney's office simply recommends that the chair open up the public hearing, take any comments, close the public hearing, and then recommends that the board approve the ordinance. And with that, I'm available for any questions on the proposal.
Commissioners, any questions of the staff, of the counselor? Seeing none, with that, I'll open the public hearing. Anybody from the public wish to comment? Bob, come on.
I mean, you're here. Figured you were gonna speak a little bit.
Again, Bob McParland, Sebastian. Again, I mean, this is a needed thing because the superintendent had a conflict, and it just gives him the opportunity to have a designee that could attend the meeting and will surely have a quorum. And again, the grants committees are meeting this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to hash out, and then our next Children's Services Advisory Committee meeting is Monday evening at 5 p.m. I would encourage the commissioners as well as the public to attend those meetings to see what is going on, because there's a lot of fantastic nonprofits that are doing tremendous work. So hopefully, and some of the kids won't be involved in any of that opioid kind of fiasco and degradation. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Anybody else from the public wish to comment? With that, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, your wish.
Yeah, I'll second it, but I would like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Reingold for his work on this, and also to thank him again for his attendance at the CSAC meetings. There have been a lot of legal questions with the previous changes that we made, so his attendance, I think, was very important, as is the school district. So thank you to my colleagues for this.
Thank you very much.
I have a motion by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Moss. Anybody from the public wish to comment on the motion? Seeing none, Commissioners, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes 5-0. Moving on to the next public hearing, 10A2, fiscal year 2023 grant application for capital and operating assistance, section 5307, and bus replacement section, section 5339, from the Federal Transit Administration. Anyone, staff? Karen was here. There's the MPO guy. I knew somebody was here.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners.
Mr. Sobchak.
Yes. Sorry, the little bit of the lag in the video.
No, it's live.
But we're here. All right. So thank you, Commissioners. Andy Sobchak, Interim Community Development Director. And what we have for you today, we have 2 Federal Transit Administration grants. These are annual grants that the MPO uses to fund the public transit system in the county. These are very important grants because they fund a majority of the operating and replacement costs for not only the GO line, which is the fixed route service, but also the community coach, which is the door-to-door service. And the reason we bring both of these to you is we need a resolution to authorize staff to submit these grants each year, and we also have to have a public hearing, which is part of the application process. So with that, we have a brief PowerPoint for you, and Brian Freeman, the MPO Staff Director, will go ahead and present that to you.
Good morning. I'm Brian Freeman, MPO Staff Director. This grant that we're applying for here is the single largest funding source for the public transportation system in Indian River County. And as Andy mentioned, we do have to do a public hearing for this grant each year. And just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of the current state of the transit system. At the local level, partners include Indian River County itself, as well as our operator, the Senior Resource Association, and the MPO. And then outside the community, we get funding support from the Federal Transit Administration, along with FDOT and the Florida Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged. And just looking at the system, it consists of the GO line fixed route system along with the community coach door-to-door service. The GO line has 14 routes that operate 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. And as you can see on the map here, the route coverage is really extensive throughout the community. just over half of all residents within the county live within a quarter mile of a GO line route. And if you extend that buffer route to 3/4 of a mile, you pick up 84% of the county's population. So really, that's just really extensive coverage. Just kind of looking at the ridership trends on the GO line, there's only been 1 year since 2000 where there was a drop in ridership on the GO line, and that was in 2020, and we kind of all know what was going on that year. Since 2020, ridership has recovered back to levels that were similar to what we were experiencing before COVID. And for the current fiscal year, which is just over halfway finished, ridership is actually up 5% over the previous fiscal year. So we expect this will be actually an all-time high when FY23 is complete. And with that high level of utilization means that the transit system is very efficient on a cost per passenger basis. And the graph here on the slide shows every fixed route system in the state of Florida. And as you can see, really by a wide margin, the GO line is the lowest to operate on a per passenger basis. Next lowest is Space Coast Area Transit in Brevard County, just to the north of us. You know, and it doesn't have to be this way, because if you think about it, Indian River County is a low density community overall. Also fairly affluent as well. Think of Martin County as being very similar to Indian River County, and yet their transit system is the least efficient in the entire state of Florida. So I think really that's just a testament to how well the GO line is operated. Looking at the grant application, there's just over $3 million in funding. Just over $2.8 million comes from the 5307, or what's called the Urban Area Formula Program. And then just over $200,000 is coming from the 5339 Bus Replacement Program. And just over half of the grant is for capital assistance. This includes money for replacement vehicles, vehicle equipment, computers, security equipment, maintenance and insurance, and then also improvements to the transit building and the upcoming North County Transit Hub. And I think it's one thing to note that this grant program covers virtually all of the capital costs associated with the transit system. And that's because we're able to use toll revenue credits from the state of Florida, so we do not have to put up any local dollars for the capital costs for the system. And there's $1.5 million in operating assistance included in the grant. There's no new local funds required to apply for those funds, because we're using a combination of state grants and county funds that were already used to match those state grants to get the FTA funds. And one thing we'd like to highlight is just the excellent return that the county receives on every dollar that's put towards the public transportation system. For every dollar that the county puts forward, we match it with a state dollar, and then we take those $2 from the state and the county to bring down 2 federal dollars. So really, it's we get $3 in return for every dollar of county funding for the system. And at this time, staff recommends that the Board of County Commissioners consider any public comment and then adopt the proposed resolution for the grant application, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioners, any question of the MPO guy and Mr. Sobchak?
Chair, as the chair of Traffic Disadvantage, we're, I think, very well versed in this, and Brian does a fantastic job.
Mr. Chair.
I think he wants to move it.
Mr. Chair?
Any questions?
Yes, and just for edification, again, our population now is somewhere about, depends upon where we're looking, at about 168, 168.5. We are getting closer to that magic number of requirement of 200, but the good news is that it wouldn't be based upon our census, it's based on the federal census. Correct?
Correct. Those numbers are updated once every decade, and so it's the 2020 census numbers that are used for determining whether or not we're a community that's above or below 200,000. And the good news is that there's been some changes to those requirements so that there is the ability to still continue receiving federal operating assistance, even if we go over that 200,000, or someday in the future when we go over the 200,000 population threshold.
Just looking at the projection of our growth in population, we're looking at about 8 years, if we're looking at the track of how growth has occurred in the past 2 years, that 8 years might be a very big year for us.
Yeah, it's, I mean, you know, there's swings with the growth in the county's population. I know in our, we're expected to kind of, I think, hit that 200,000 number sometime before 2040, but exactly when before 2040 may be a little difficult to see. We've had higher than average rates of growth the last couple of years, but then some of the years before that were offset that by the lower rates that we experienced.
But 200,000 is the trigger.
Yes. Yes, and that's actually the number for what's defined as the urbanized area for the community. And so our Vero Beach Sebastian urbanized area picks up Micco, picks up Barefoot Bay, picks up Grant, picks up Lakewood Park and North Hutchinson Island as well. So it's actually, it's already a little bit.
I don't think we're going to see 2040. But, well, we'll look forward to that commission making that decision. Any event, thank you for a tremendous job with our transportation system.
Sure, and I think really a lot of the accolades have to go to the Senior Resource Association. Sure. They're running the system, you know, every day, and I know earlier on the agenda we just extended the agreement with them for another 2 additional years, and really they just do a phenomenal job. You know.
And Ms. Deagle and her team are very responsive to many of any challenges we are confronted with or inquiries. Very accommodating. Thank you.
Commissioners, any further questions, staff, before I open the public hearing?
Mr. Chair, one thing that I think the public might want to know, and Mr. Freeman mentioned the toll dollars that we get. There's a sliver of the Florida Turnpike, I think the 173 milepost north that, thank God it goes through Indian River County, otherwise we wouldn't be eligible for those dollars.
Yeah.
Sliver is right.
Yes.
Yeah, everything.
Let's not move the turnpike, will we?
Everything's done very well. I'll be like I've said time before, who would ever thought we'd see over 1 million people riding public transportation in Indian River County? Not in my wildest dreams. So, all right, with that, no further questions. I'm going to open the public hearing.
I didn't even see this item on the agenda, but again, you know, maybe you think I always come up here and I complain, but I just want to tell you, I commend the board's support for public transportation. I've been on the Metropolitan Planning Organization for Sebastian for 12 years now, and I've been a member of the Transportation Disadvantage Board for 10 years. And it's been the support of this board that has been able to make this. I mean, none of you ride it. I don't ride it. You know, we're fortunate enough that we don't have to rely on this transportation, but what it does for individuals is unbelievable, as well as also the community coach. It changes lives because those are people it takes them shopping, to appointments, medical appointments, door to door, because they need that door to door service. They can't walk. And the way that Senior Resource Association with Karen Deagle and Chris Stevenson, they get the most bang for the buck. And Andy and Brian are fantastic. They always answer any of my crazy questions. And yes, Mr. Flesher, I'm constantly asking them about the sustainability, because this is a benefit that's for the community. If it was ever taken away, I don't know what would happen to some people. But again, I want to commend the board for supporting transportation all these years, and it is a shining example for the rest of the state, if not the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public wish to comment? Seeing none, with that, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any further comments or questions?
No, other than it is a great system, and I look back as hearing Bob McPartland come up for the third time. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. Hearing him reflect back at the system, I recall about 20 years ago there was 5 white 15-passenger vans that were not too conspicuous, riding about town, picking up people that were just standing there in an unmarked bus stop, just by a street corner that everybody kind of knew was the bus stop, with no cover, seats, and just look at the system that has developed and how great it is that it was able to be developed without that big city municipal feel. It was done gradually and grew with the needs of the community, and I think we have a really great system. Looking back, remember those 15-passenger vans without air conditioning? They were different. And for Bob, I do ride, and it's been I don't depend upon it, but I have ridden in various routes, and it's exceptional service. So let's keep continuing with that. With that, make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Moss. Anybody from the public wish to comment on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Brian, also known as the MPO
Go
guy.
get the money.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much. All right, moving on to our third public hearing, 10A3. Public hearing, an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, amending section 104.03, retirement system, and creation of section 10403.1, defined contribution plan of chapter 104, human resources, to modify the county retirement benefits and providing for codification, severability, repeal of conflicting provisions, and an effective date. And I see our Human Resource Director is here, Ms. Boyle.
Yes,
Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Blessing.
The ordinance revision or change that you have in front of you is something that's pretty important to recruitment and retention of county employees. In the state of Florida, state entities and county entities are required to participate in the Florida retirement system. So it's compulsory membership. So we are required to offer the Florida retirement system as our retirement benefit for our employees. However, there's a portion of our workforce that has been deemed ineligible to be offered a retirement benefit because they have already earned a retirement benefit from the Florida retirement system through a prior career. And then when we hire them to come to work for Indian River County in a variety of positions, I'm unable to offer them a retirement benefit currently. So that's why this ordinance is being proposed, so that we can offer them a retirement benefit under a defined contribution plan at no additional cost to the county. And that's what you have before you. This defined contribution plan would allow me to offer employees who are deemed ineligible by the Florida retirement system to participate in the Florida retirement system the opportunity to enroll in the defined contribution plan benefit, and for us to provide them a retirement benefit, which is a core fundamental benefit package that we offer our employees. And I appreciate your consideration of this ordinance.
John?
I just want to thank you, Suzanne. I just want to reiterate, and it's a comment that I shared at the previous meeting when we brought this forward to advertise for the public hearing. This is really, besides to Suzanne's point, an issue of, to help us with recruit potential other employees that have retired from the FRS and are not eligible to participate. It's really at the fundamental core, it's an issue of fairness and equity as we provide a benefit for all of our employees, and then while we are providing, paying the state for those non-eligible members a portion, this only allows the difference between the two, so there is at least some semblance or some amount of that's being deposited in a 401A for them to augment their retirement, and it's not providing any greater benefit for an employee over than every other existing employee or member that may participate. So I fully support this. I think it's critical as we move forward as an organization to evaluate our benefits, and this is just one piece to help us become more competitive in attracting talent.
Okay, since this could affect, and Commissioner Lohr and myself with this, can you explain that part of it?
So I know, and I didn't stay at Holiday Inn. Yeah.
So Well, first off, were you asking from a voting standpoint or from a participation standpoint?
Participation, I want to be, transparent in this whole thing, just say, hey, because it does affect us, so I want the public to know.
So first off, from a voting standpoint, and I made the same comment at the last meeting, we talked about this issue. The Florida statutes are very clear that when a commissioner is voting on something like salary, benefits, and the like, those are not voting conflicts for the commissioner. So that's issue number one. Participation issue, however, as commented on at the last board meeting, the version of the ordinance that we've presented today is not an automatic. There is an ability to opt out. There is, since you've raised the question, there is a legal issue out there as to whether whether this program would be itself additional compensation. I've looked at litigation that's going on in Escambia County, looked at what other commissioners and other jurisdictions are doing. I personally don't think that this is an issue of additional compensation under the statute. However, the issue has been raised by our clerk, and we've had initial conversations with our clerk about that issue. But otherwise, I'm available for any other comments or questions. Hopefully I've answered the question.
It just, to echo Dylan's comments, I think we can seek advice, prior to, if the two members on the board would like to opt in, we could seek advice, through like the Commission of Ethics, just to dot our T's or dot our I's, cross our T's to make sure before you elected to participate, if that was your choosing.
Right, and that's the way, Commissioner Lord speaker, I just plan to look at the pros and cons of it at the time when it comes forward, and I'll make a decision then on whether it is something I should do or whether it's something I should not do. I mean, when I got into this gig, I didn't have it, I knew it, and it's not really, it's not about me. It's about if we can recruit employees to come, because we're like a lot of businesses where we need some additional employees in some key spots, and if it'll attract some retirees to come in and join the force, that's to me what it's all about with regards to that. Counselor?
And if I can clarify my statement, please understand that the clerk had no opposition to the plan or the program with regards to our general employees. The clerk was supportive of that program and understood it was just a very technical legal issue with regards to commissioners and whether something was additional compensation or not additional compensation under the statute.
And Mr. Chair, I just want to, again, I would reiterate, I just think it's a fairness and equity issue. There's no additional amount being provided to any commissioner or employee greater than what is being provided to those same in a similarly situated position.
Right.
Good enough.
So, Mr. Chair, so as John just mentioned, so my situation, your situation are very similar. And as the county administrator said, the fairness and equity, whatever the county is paying for the other three commissioners is greater right now than what they're paying for you and I. But the bigger picture is all of the openings that we have all over this agency, this county, who's to say we don't find somebody from DOT that's retired that knows they can't get back into the plan, and we know how that division is struggling with the county, not to mention community development, others. Maybe it was a state inspector, who knows? So I think also in approving this, we have to get the word out to those particular eligible employees, and we would leave that with Suzanne and her team.
Absolutely.
And if I could add something, we, to include the two of you, we have 8 people currently on our payroll today that are not provided any retirement benefit. Just like your service has no retirement benefit associated with it today, I have 6 other members of our workforce who, as a result of this ordinance, I'll be able to offer them a retirement benefit so that we can equalize the benefit offering to the entire workforce. And it's important to note, we're not excluding them from participation. The Florida retirement system said they're not eligible to re-enroll. So this is a way for us to equalize the benefit offering and provide an opportunity to have retirement benefit for those employees that that are coming on board. And I just want to share with you, I have an equipment mechanic in our fleet division, which is a hard to recruit position. That person would be eligible. Library, golf course employee, trades worker, which again is a difficult recruit, maintenance worker, and a wastewater treatment plant operator. So this will really help us to equalize our benefits and provide a retirement benefits for persons who the FRS won't allow us to enroll them.
And I think internally, while it levels the playing field internally, I think it also levels the playing field from a recruiting standpoint, because they could go to any other non-FRS employer, local government agency, and receive a retirement benefit. So this provides equity and also levels the playing field. So I think it's an important tool as we try to advance and recruit more individuals into our county.
If there are no further questions, I'll move to approve.
We had to open the public hearing first, I'm sorry.
Oh.
It needs to go before the public.
Also a very small fraction.
Comments of staff?
Yeah. No, again, I see the conversation is evolving about, again, there are two commissioners that are in that situation of retirement. The FRS ruling is clear that you cannot re-enter. So I get that, but I'd like to refocus back on, this is about equality and fairness as far, and a recruitment tool as well, because there is a likelihood that someone will not want to enter. They rather go to the private sector and where they can have that same benefit. This in no way usurps what the FRS ruling is, and it doesn't cost us, the taxpayer, the county government, anything further than it would have if they had not been in FRS.
Correct.
Retirement, correct?
Correct.
So basically, it has to evolve back to fairness and equality, and nothing to do with FRS in any way, shape, or form.
Correct.
And the taxpayer should know that there's no additional cost other than what had been customarily approved and provided for that particular appointment or designation, wherever they are in the county government. Correct?
That is correct.
Okay, no further.
Any further questions, staff? With that, I'll open the public hearing. Anybody from the public wish to comment? Anybody? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I have a motion by Commissioner Bosch. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Commissioner Lohr. Anybody from the public wish to comment on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. All right, moving on to 10C, public notices. Counselor.
Thank you very much. We have a notice of a scheduled public hearing on a budget amendment for June 20th, 2023. And that's our one public hearing to announce. And with that, I turn it back to the chair.
Thank you.
That was easy.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to departmental matters. 12F, Office of Management and Budget, 12F1, Tourist Development Council 2023-2024 Budget Recommendations. I see we have Ms. Daniels at the podium.
There's all the stuff there.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. Kristen Daniels, Budget Director. Before you today is the Tourist Development Council award recommendations for the upcoming fiscal year. All right, so each year, the Budget Office sets a projection for the upcoming fiscal year revenues for tourist tax dollars. And through April tourist tax revenues are exceeding last year's collections by 13.5.5%, or $355,236, and exceeding budgeted estimates by 40.9%, or $868,694. Now, this is for all 4 cents that are levied. Remember, these 4 cents are split between 3 funds: tourism development, beach restoration, and also our lease contribution out at Jackie Robinson Training Complex. So what you see here is the local option resort tax. That's the 1 2/3 cents that the tourism development committees receive. We are projecting that going up by 15%. So what this does is it gives the Tourism Development Fund an additional $252,715, or 17.7%, to award for next year, fiscal year 22-23. So back in March, the Budget Office opened the application period for all agencies who were interested in applying for these TDC funds. These applications were due back May 1st, and here are the requested amounts. Of the agencies that applied, the total requested was $1,336,280. So if you move 1 line down from the total there, the reserve for contingency amount is $128,081. This is set per board policy, and this amount is there in the event that any unanticipated expenses arise mid-year. The TDC is free to recommend those changes be made and those awards given throughout the year. What we also have this year at the bottom is that cash forward line. So basically what happened is, with a budget, your revenues and your expenses have to balance. The revenues totaled $1,678,781. However, the Budget Office did not receive applications totaling that amount. So I had an additional $214,420 left over that I needed to place somewhere. So basically that cash forward line is just a placeholder for the budget to balance, and ultimately, if unused, would just be retained in the fund balance of the Tourism Development Fund. So on May 17th, the TDC met to review all applications and hear presentations from everyone with the exception of the chambers. And the TDC voted to approve all applications as requested. The TDC also voted not to retain that $214,420 in the cash forward expense line. The TDC voted to allocate that amount to the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce. So I've spoken to the chamber, and they are planning to utilize those additional fundings to fund a visitor center specialist position, upgrades to the IRC Visitor Center, as well as increase in their publications and printing, and the majority of that funding is going for additional advertising and promotional expenses. I see Dory and Ben are here, likely to answer any questions you may have. So this is the TDC's recommendation. As you can see, that cash forward on the bottom there has been zeroed out. The additional $214,420 went towards the Indian River County Chamber, which brings their total recommended amount for fiscal year, should say 23-24, my apologies, to $932,170, which is a $276,086 increase, or 42.1%. So today's staff's recommendation is that the board approve the funding amounts recommended by the TDC for a total allocation of $1,678,781, and authorize the county county attorney to prepare standard grant agreements for all funding recipients.
Commissioners, any questions of Ms. Daniels?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Last year when they applied for the grants, I guess it was about this time last year, how much was returned to the county?
Oh, sure. Give me just a second. Are you asking for all the agencies collectively, or just the
collectively.
chamber?
Collectively, he said.
collectively?
Collectively, okay. So last year, 21-22, we had $17,647 returned.
Okay. Of the 214 that's going back, that's suggested to go back to the Indian River County Chamber, I see the three things that I suppose after the grant closed and after the May meeting, I'd have to have some more specifics on those three things.
Okay, so I do.
And also, Commissioners, I want to recognize that you're talking over a 40% increase, and we're getting into some tough times that you're going to see. And albeit this is the fund, I gathered that, but those numbers jump out, and sometimes other things that we fund will recognize a 42% increase. So I say we need to be careful with this. And if we could get the specifics of the three things that the 214 that the chamber wants to
Sure,
spend it
I
on.
have it. I have it right here. An additional $7,000 for benefits, $5,000 for supplies, $15,000 for printing and publications. The bulk is $184,420 for advertising and $3,000 for the FAM tours.
Okay. Are there any large outreach things that they would perhaps do with that 214? We've talked up here before about the growth at I-95 in Oslo. Is there outreach programs to large manufacturers? Is that something that I think those dollars, if approved, perhaps need to be laser focused on?
That'd probably be better for them to answer. I'm not sure the ins and outs of their operation.
Good morning, Commissioner. Story Stone, President of the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce. And we appreciate the questions, and we also appreciate the funding at whatever level. When we go into a funding process for TDC dollars, we do not know how much money you all have collected. We take our best guess. And we always have an estimate of that based on the previous year. This year, last year we did come in, and I believe we asked for a 20% increase. This year, we asked for 9%. The reason being, we had asked for that money last year. We knew there was more money in the TDC budget, which we felt we could go after, but I also wasn't aware of the exact dollars. We always have projects, we always have funding needs that we don't ask for. We hold those back. One of the things that you were asking for is outreach. One of our major projects that we want to do is to do more marketing and more campaigns throughout the west coast of Florida. We get a lot of those stay vacation people, especially in the summer, do more campaigning on the west coast of Florida and start hitting markets that we're noticing in Michigan and Maine for specific advertising and targeting. We have to be very careful with the TDC dollars when it comes to economic development. Going into the Oslo Road interchange, unless there was a hotel or unless there was some kind of tourist-related development out there, we would not be able to do a whole lot with it. What we always can do is market Indian River County for the benefit of tourism, and that does always lead to some economic development benefit as well. But for the most part, this dollar was allocated to projects that we put aside when we did our budget, thinking that we didn't have enough money to spend on them. And that's how we came back after the 214 and said, boy, we do have some things that we could use to do with these dollars. Did Commissioner Laurel, did that help answer your concerns on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Vice Chairman?
I just want to ask Dylan perhaps to clarify what this particular portion of the TDC pennies can be used for. There's statutory requirements surrounding what different portions of it, but the part that is allocated towards our partner agencies has a lot of specificity to it.
Yep. So under the statute and our code, this is supposed to be used to promote and advertise tourism in the state of Florida and nationally and internationally. However, if tax revenues are expended for an activity, service, venue, or event, the activity, service, venue, or event must have as one of its main purposes the attraction of tourists as evidenced by the promotion of that activity, service, venue, or event to tourists. So that's really what we're talking about under the statute and our code, which is what this penny is designed to do. Hopefully, Commissioner, I answered your question.
Yes, thank you. So Commissioner Lohr, I totally agree with you. I would love to put more money to economic development, especially around those upcoming interchanges, and have a plan to do something there. Unfortunately, this particular pot of money, we can't use for that. Our hands are a little bit tied as to what we can use it for, which, you know, I get because that's how it's collected, but Commissioner.
And that was the dilemma in which we were exposed to at the TDC. Once again, I wanted to ask, as far as that concern is, Kristen, can you give us the dollar amount that's actually in the contingency fund at this point?
Sure. So for the current budget, let me find my notes here. I'm gonna make sure I get right the question you're asking me. The reserve for contingency in the current year is $111,375. That's the amount that the TDC could award to any unanticipated project. That is not the fund balance, if that's what you're asking.
Yes,
You're asking for fund balance.
fund balance.
Okay, the fund balance, hard to say right now because you get revenues every month from tourist tax, but you may have a large spender like the chamber who doesn't ask for payment every month. So right now, the TDC fund balance is a little over 2.5 million, but that just could be due to the lag time of when we have those expenses being paid, because revenue's coming in every month regardless of what's going out. So about over 2.5 million.
And that was the fund that we created just a couple of years ago.
No, fund balance.
How much is that in there? That's,
It goes out to the same pot. Once reserve for contingency isn't spent in that year, it just goes into fund balance. Fund balance can be spent on
so we're
any.
looking at $2.5 million. And we're looking at $214,420 that at the end of the day was unencumbered. And everyone was satisfied at 100% of their request. The chamber could have asked up to and including a number even higher than that amount.
Slightly higher.
Slightly
so
higher, a few
the-
dollars more. So actually, it's within the realm of our ordinance to allot the chamber that funding.
The chambers can receive collectively up to 70% of the total amount. Right now, with the additional 214 going into their budget, they are at 68.2%. So they're reaching that ceiling. The request that they came in at, they were collectively at 55.4%.
So the dilemma was, should that funding be pushed into the contingency fund as unencumbered funds, or given to the chamber if they can justify it, and utilize it for better marketing and promotion for the big draw. After all, there's a lot being done, and there's always 10%, in this case 20% more, that can be done. And if it's not done, the funding would then revert back. This is demand requested, correct?
It stays in the fund balance.
So it could possibly stay in the fund balance in any event. The third option was, you might recall, some of you may recall, that we had a study done. The study was done by State College, and it was looked at, unfortunately, during COVID times. And actually the study kind of got stalled, thwarted, and reignited once again, and then we got the results. Now, this study was to see where we're going, what we're doing, and what is the best target that we could look at to increase the value of tourism in Indian River County. It's, in my opinion, due to the COVID factor and the stall, that it might have been not having the best in results. So another option could have been to take that funding and recommend that it goes to an additional study. I don't know how popular that would have been to recommend that we revisit a study, perhaps an independent study by another resource that might have been suggested. But overall, it was a split vote, but the recommendation is to place the funding opportunity in the hands of the chamber. And again, they've come back with some justification. And if that's the case, those funds may not be utilized, and we might want to visit again, another visit at the study to see where we're going and what we're doing. Once again, I agree, we are facing uncertain times right now. But you have to look at the track record of what all of our community partners have done in tourism and how we're able to collect 4 cents on a head-to-bed to equate nearly $4 million. It is an incredible, and I know this talk of 5, which may not alter anything. It'll only increase the abundance. But what do we do with $214,420 other than put it in the bank? Thank you.
So I just want to reiterate a couple of things that Commissioner Flesher so eloquently stated, that the monies that we get and that are expended through TDC, 70% of that per our ordinance could automatically, right off the top, go to the chambers. They have been good partners over the years and tried to not necessarily reach that all the time. So the other groups who are also working in the tourism industry could do their programming as well. But per ordinance, the chambers are the marketing arm of the county. They are our tourism agency. We do not have a visitors bureau or a convention bureau like other counties, larger counties do. The chambers serve in that role for us, and that is why that 70% is in there per ordinance. Secondly, I think it's important, as Commissioner Flesher pointed out, that this is all reimbursable. So just because the money was allocated doesn't mean they get a big check. And then if they don't use it, they give it back to us. They have to submit, and from what I know about the budget office and that whole process, very detailed reports of how that money is used. They have to basically prove that it is used in furthering marketing for the county. And they have huge presentations on their marketing campaigns that they have put together and the plans going forward. So I would agree with Commissioner Flesher that if we want to benefit from added tourism, whether that's through increased dollars from the beach penny or the Dodgertown penny or whatever case, it's all based on getting those tourists here so we can collect those dollars that our visitors are paying. This is not money or taxes on our residents. It is taxes on people coming to our community and utilizing our businesses and our amenities and our beaches and our airboat tours and all those kinds of things. So, I think that is a good thing to get that back out there, because the more we put out there, the more we bring back. And Indian River County is primarily a service, tourist-based economy. Most of our economy and most of our jobs are in that industry. So it is our role to try to increase that and keep that industry stable. I would say, Commissioner Flesher, that if the TDC thinks it's necessary to update that report, that study, and I don't disagree, because I I recall very vividly the problems that we had trying to get that accomplished in COVID. It sounds like that there is dollars available in reserves or in the fund balance that may not be expended this year or of the past couple years, that if you wanted to do a special project like that, that might be something you guys want to discuss at a future meeting. But the other thing I would point out with some of the monies that are in reserves, and Commissioner Flesher probably knows or remembers more of this than I do, there's a lot of special projects or special events that come up mid-year. I'm thinking about the Shooting Masters and some of the big fishing tournaments that we need to help get off the ground, whether it's through bid fees or other things, other opportunities that come up, that some of this reserve dollars are for. And then the last thing I would point out is that it's always been our policy to put money aside in the good years, because having been on TDC in some of the very, very lean years, you need to reach in to put that money back on the street. You need to reach into those reserve funds, because when it dries up and when the economy is bad, we are not able to do that to attract people. And attracting people in a tourist economy is becoming much, much more difficult. There's more options. People are moving around more. They're looking for, different things. And so there's all these niches that you have to market to. So I think it's good that we've given that to the chamber. So I would commend the TDC's choice, but I would point out that if a study is necessary, and I don't disagree, that maybe that's something we could revisit as a special project.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moss?
Just to confirm, so we don't need to spend the $420,000 this year. I mean, we can hold it in reserve. It's not burning a hole in our pocket that, we have to do it this year. It's got to be applied this year. That's.
It's a plug in the budget, because the budget has to balance. You can spend it or not spend it.
Okay, but it stays, it remains, because we had a very good year. And we'll talk about this in the next matter. And actually, that's stated in the backup materials for the next matter, which is increasing tourist tax. And that is that the entire state had a very robust year. But we can't necessarily count on that for next year. And myself, I would like to see this go into reserve in case there are other contingencies that we might not anticipate. No one anticipated COVID. There was no way that we could. I guess we're operating under the assumption that it's over, but I don't know that for a fact, and none of us knows that for a fact. There are other environmental considerations with the beaches, for example. Red tide, and you were telling me about something. That was some kind of algae? Anyway.
The seaweed that's coming down, yeah, they've
But it was something that could affect tourism, without going into detail. It was something that could affect tourism, and you could see a decline. So I prefer just to keep this in reserve, to keep, we're fulfilling all the requests. We're meeting all of the requests that were made in full. So we were very fortunate. There didn't have to be any discussion about anybody being left behind or cut out or cut back or any situation like that occurring. So I'm very happy to see that there wasn't any contention. But I do think that when we have such a robust year, I think it's important to think ahead, and that next year might not be so robust. We hope it will be, but we can't plan on that. So I'd rather plan to keep this in reserve just in case. Thank you.
Mr. Administrator.
I just want to add, obviously, yesterday we had individual meetings and the issue of the study had come up. I did, Kristen provided that to me. And the 2020 study was really a visitor study, which provided a profile of who the visitors are and what their spending patterns are. So, I probably think, and I haven't had a chance to speak to Dory because we had our meetings yesterday, and I do think it might be appropriate in working with the the tourist component with the chamber to revisit a study that not just looks at who the profile is and their spending patterns, but what do we do in terms of strategies to enhance and support the tourism industry. So I think that is a more proactive opportunity in the upcoming year, whether it be through these funds or through the, applying using some of the fund balance. I think it's a wise and judicious, course of action, because we want to be positioned, even if we have a shallow and extended, recession, we want to be positioned for when we come out of that recession to capitalize. One of the things, I just read the study last night, when we talk about discussing, focus on West Coast Florida, and that immediately it's like most of looking at the study results, our visitors weren't coming from there. They're coming from Orlando and the East Coast. So that's where I think we need to make sure we have some strategies and be very targeted on where we're going to go. So to make sure that we're not we're not trying to compete in a market that we may not be able to. I'm not saying that that's not appropriate. And they may have more information outside of this visitor study. I'm just not privy to that. It's part of that learning curve and still drinking from the fire hose. But it's something I'll certainly follow up with and meet with Dory on, because I do think, as I reviewed this, and I get it was started pre-COVID and then continued, but I do think, that maybe there's opportunities to look at, either using this to augment an actionable plan to enhance, promotion, marketing, and attraction of tourists for the future.
Mr. Chair, I'll say, and Commissioner Flesher said that the fund balance or the balance of the fiscal grant would come back. And I think Kristen said earlier, one of my first questions was 17,000 came back.
Yeah, not a lot.
Yeah, and you start talking about over $200,000. Our taxpayers don't understand this program. If they're watching it or they're not, they don't understand it. The fact is, our taxpayers are looking at the future. They're looking at homeowners insurance skyrocketing. Will I even be able to travel next year? There's a lot of factors in that. So with that, I tend to agree with what Commissioner Moss is saying for a rainy day, because wouldn't it be nice to, when and if this recession comes, we're able to jump out ahead of it because we have a tremendous fund balance. That's just something to think about. I think that they all submitted their grants and were probably thrilled with being fully funded. And all of a sudden another 200 comes along. And unless I see a definite outline of where those dollars are going to go, that's going to be return on our investment, I say it goes back to the fund balance.
Mr. Fleischer?
In hearing these concerns, I just want to address a couple. I heard about the seaweed and the red tide and the black cloud over tourism. Red tide starts from dust. It's totally unpredictable. It happens. It's a natural phenomenon. It's nothing that we do, and it may alter when people are here whether they can go into the water and feel comfortable and safe. I get that. As far as seaweed is a natural phenomenon. It happens every year, and if it wasn't for the seaweed, you wouldn't have any sea turtles here, okay? And you wouldn't have dunes here. And fertilization. Seaweed is very necessary. And most of the tourists that are here, when there has been a seaweed abundance, just push it off to the side. It's a calming thing. I just, look, folks, people come here to Indian River County, Vero Beach, Sebastian, because of what we have. And it's marketed that way, of what we have. We don't have a theme park here. We don't have a 14,000-foot mountain for people to climb. We have any unique attraction other than a quality of life. And that is selling. It's selling north, it's selling south, but it's really selling here. And that's why we felt that it was best to be infused into the chamber. Now, with that in mind, we could actually nip this in the bud if we're hearing about a study, I trust that the chamber can have a study done, or we can go back to the TDC. But we can utilize that funding now for a study, or the chamber can use it for a study, an independent study, that we can have near immediate results, because if the chamber does it, they can do it in their own fashion, as opposed to us looking at competitive pricing and then having to look at bids and requests, and whether it's a state college or it's an outside source. We can cut through all of that if we just ask if the Chamber of Commerce would do that. And that would be an allowable expense, would it not?
A
A
study.
request, and if we had the chamber be able to do that, we can address both issues, an abundance of funding and an encumbering of funding, so that we can have a study done, and that study could be ready for when we're looking forward for next year's budget, and I think it would be most appropriate. But just thinking out of the box, hearing what we're hearing and the concerns that have been presented.
I think the study should be going year-long. That's the chamber's responsibility.
That's how we did it before, Commissioner. We had it going for a year, and unfortunately, COVID hit. So
Yes.
we ended up extending that study out a while so that we could get more data. But at this point, I would be happy to include a study in that $214,000 to make sure that we could have, since things have changed, we've actually talked about this in-house, since things have changed, it's worthwhile bringing in someone, and we have new data sources. There are sources out there that can ping your cell phone and know exactly where you are, what you're spending, where you came from. All of those resources are available to us now, and we would be happy to build a study in and provide that scope when we come back to TDC in August, if you'd like, to have a study as part of this.
I mean, vacation rentals here is off the charts, and the cottage thought process is growing far more interest, and people are coming here, and there are actually residents that are looking at staycations here as well. I guess that's not the draw we're concerned about, but we're looking at those who coming from Oregon, Wyoming, Vermont, Texas, coming here to Indian River County because this is a relaxation-oriented vacation. And it's that promotion. I've said it here before, but I was on the 10th floor of the Marriott Marquis, a place I formerly was employed, and I was out on the seating area, and I looked at one of those large Trons in Times Square, and I had to call the chamber. I said, I just saw us on the largest screen in Times Square. How many other people saw that? Well, apparently a lot of them saw it, because I don't know if you noticed, even the tags that are down here, I guess they're not flying. There's a lot of people coming to Indian River County in vacations in large numbers. So much so that we don't even see the difference in, when we say, I think we used to have a term when people went back home, snowbirds, and they came back. We're not seeing that anymore. We're still seeing a consistency, because when those go home up north, we have vacationers here, and we're seeing a consistent flow. So I appreciate the commitment. I just thought it would be a good suggestion if we had the Chamber of Commerce commit to an immediate study.
I think that I totally agree with you on updating the study. I think that is definitely necessary, as I don't think we really got the information we were looking for out of the last one. I do think it's important that either TDC or us or a combined conversation speaks to specifically what we want to find out from that study. I mean, I would think, where people are coming from is very important, and how much they're spending, but also how are they getting here? Are they driving? Are they flying? Are there targeted campaigns we need to be doing in certain airports, on certain modes of transportation? Are they coming into the port and then coming down here for day trips. I don't know. What are they doing when they're here? Obviously, the beaches are big, but there's a lot of people that come, to Northwest County for birding. Birding is huge. They spend a lot of money. I mean, my God, half of those cameras are worth more than I am. They're doing fishing. The new Headwaters Lake is bringing people here from, there was 5 different bass boats at the restaurant for lunch the other day. And, we always make a point to ask where people are coming from. And they're coming from Arkansas. They're coming from, a bunch of them are coming from Ohio. And again, these boats cost more than I do, or I would ever be worth, to be honest with you. And they are staying for weeks at a time to get up at 5 a.m. and be on the lake by 6 to fish all day. And so, where do we need to be marketing to those people? There are other things in the community besides the beaches, which is still the main attraction. We have beautiful beaches and people come here for that. So I think a little bit of conversation or thought about what it is we want to gain from the study, and then how do we want to utilize that study? Is it going to help the chamber craft more targeted marketing campaigns? Are we going to use that in what kind of organizations and agencies we're funding? Because in all truth, the chamber is really, the 2 chambers are the ones that are situated the best to do those kinds of targeted marketing campaigns. The other funded agencies work with the chambers and work with each other, but they kind of add value to more regional draws. I don't know if what would come out of the study would be utilized for them. So I am totally on board with a study. Don't misunderstand that. I just think there needs to be a little bit more conversation about what the study entails and what it might be utilized for. So I don't know if that needs to be a conversation in August at TDC, just to kind of get the tourist professionals' input on what information they would be able to provide and those types of things. So, still based on our ordinance, I think the $214,000 going to the chambers is completely appropriate and within our policy. I think that the amount of money in the fund balance, which I know, Kristen, could be impacted based on receipts and reimbursements, but really it's not like it's going to suck down $500,000 to $1 million. You're still going to have probably 2.2 in there by the time this fiscal year is over, if not more. And this budget does include some reserve for contingency, like we do every year. So that contingency continues to grow. If we were hit with an economic downturn, like we were with COVID, or actually COVID was some of our better years, to be honest with you, like we were in 2008, 2010 period, we still have plenty of money to offset the funding that would need to be there. So I'm completely comfortable with TDC's recommendation. My request would be that TDC have a discussion about a future study and bring that back as a special project. So I would be happy to make that motion.
And I appreciate that. I believe that if, again, my suggestion was just to get through this, to get to a center line, and acknowledge the fact that we may have had the results of a tough assessment because of COVID and other conditions. But if we were to do that, the August meeting is a meeting that we have presentations by both chambers, so it is rather, it's lengthy. I would like to include in that agenda discussion for recommendations to this commission so that we can move forward with ideas and a purpose for the chamber to go forward. And then we would bring that back here and send it to the chamber. The only challenging challenging part of this is that we are approving the recommendation today. So funding will be available, so we can get it done. It's, maybe the cart is even with the horse at this point, but I think we can accomplish that and satisfy the thought process of having a study and also not taking the funding and putting it into contingency or leaving it where it is. We do have ample funding and contingency. And if I know anything about the funds that we've done in the past, we've reduced a lot of our contingencies over the years and encumbered them into areas of needs and concerns, and still are operating in all aspects correctly. We are constrained as to what we can do with this funding. This is heads to beds funding, 4 cents on every head. We have to do the right thing with the funding. And it's not from the taxpayer. We can't use this and put this on another burner. This is a user tax.
Mr. Chair,
And I'll second that motion.
Mr. Chair, I think far too often in government, we decide that a study needs to be occurred, and if we can't find a resolution, well, let's do a study. My explanation to that is our staff here are continuously studying things, trends in that. And I submit that year-round, year after year, both chambers should have a portion of their budgeted dollars dedicated to studying the trends. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to create a new study. And that's my thoughts on that.
Okay, now that y'all have beat it, it's my turn on this. I'm completely good with the TDC's recommendation, and let me tell you why. Kristen, you said that, you know, the reserve fund has the fund has over $2 million in it. Was it 22 we started, or was it 21 that Commissioner O'Brien made the motion to have contingency?
Yeah, so
Not that,
in beginning October 1st, 2021, the board voted to allocate the additional 1/3 portion of the penny that was freed up from Jackie Robinson Training Complex, and the board's policy was to reserve 75% of those additional proceeds to go into this reserve for contingency.
right. So if you take just what's on your backup material, reserved for contingency in 22, 23, there's 111,000, and then this year there was 128,000. Those are two different figures, right? It's not a carryover from the 111 into the 128.
If the 111 does not get spent, it goes into fund balance.
Okay, it goes
You
into
get a
fund
new
balance.
reserve for contingency every year. If it's not spent, it goes into fund balance. Any given Tuesday, you guys can appropriate reserve for contingency. If we take from fund balance, that's the budget amendment that has to be publicly noticed and advertised, and it just takes, it's
Right.
more of a process to take from fund balance than it is reserve for contingency.
Right, and those were used for in case some good idea came forward and we wanted to have the money. So I don't think that's money's been spent. So technically, there's $250,000 right there that's still left in the fund from the past year, and what would be appropriated for this year in that contingency fund. Plus whatever else, maybe, I don't know, do all the groups always use all their money?
No.
So there's additional funding in there too.
There's,
What my
during
point is
COVID,
to
there was a
answer.
lot of money returned to the fund because the
Right.
agencies couldn't do their traveling and they couldn't have their events. So during the COVID years, we banked money that we promised agencies because they didn't have the opportunity to spend it. It's no fault of their own, it's just a fact of COVID.
Right, so my point is that there is, like Commissioner Adams said and the Commissioner Fleischer said, seems to be plenty of money in the reserve fund, or in what's left over in the whole fund of TDC.
balance.
Right, from the past, so there seems to be plenty of money in there. Also, again, I'm going to reemphasize in my presentation when I give it, that this is just a user tax. This is strictly a tax paid by anybody that rents a hotel room, a vacation rental, an RV spot, anybody that travels. This is not an ad valorem tax and is not used as an ad valorem tax. This is strictly that. It has certain regulations and certain guidelines that had to be followed, and we have talked about those over the last 2.5 years of to who maybe wants some that didn't apply, who did get some, who didn't get some, based on the rules and regulations of the state statute in reference to the tourist development money and how it can be collected and how it can be spent. Also, I know that some of y'all were concerned about the increase of the $214,000. That only brought the Chamber of Commerce up to 42%. They only asked for 9%.
No, that's a
The
42% increase.
Well, the Sebastian River Chamber of Commerce increase was 51%.
Right.
But the overall increase for the amount requested only went from 15 to 33%. So we're still at only a 33% increase in the overall money that TDC approved. So math-wise, money-wise, how that's spent, what's done, I can tell you that Commissioner Erman is good with it. And I support the motion to accept this recommendation and move forward. So any further comments? Counselor, you have something?
I just want to make sure I understood the motion clearly, which was basically accept the TDC motion was the first part of it. That's sort of part A. Part B was then to request TDC to come back with a study, request TDC to come back with a study as a special project. That is not part of that 214,000 additional funds. And that money was going to come from, and I'm going to look to Kristen here, it's either reserve for contingency or fund balance. Which one were you saying it should come from?
It would come from reserve for contingency from default if it's less than the amount available. If it's more than the amount available, we have to go from the fund balance number.
No, my motion was, you got A right. B was to ask TDC to have a conversation and discussion about a possibility of a study, what that would look like, what information would be requested, what information would be gathered, how it would be used, and if they find it necessary to do, then make a recommendation to us on how they would suggest we move forward with that. It wasn't asking them to do it, it was asking them to have a conversation regarding doing it.
Thank you for the clarification.
Related to that clarification, might I add that it'd be study and or plan? Because I think that's one of the things we're looking for. The study kind of provides an overview of who the visitors are, where they're coming from. The plan provides how we're moving forward.
Yeah, that's fine.
And-
Is that how you understood
Yes, that, the second is correct as well, in that, but, Counsel, you said that it would not be part of that 214. The intention was, right? Did you state that?
My motion was to go ahead and approve TDC recommendations, which had the 214 going to the chamber for their advertising efforts. Then have the discussion, if it's deemed, if TDC feels or has a plan to move forward with the study, come back to us, and if we need to fund it, we can fund it out of fund balance, contingency, or wherever TDC and the commission finds it appropriate at the time. I wasn't giving any specifics on where that money was coming from, and my recommendation was to go ahead and approve the TDC funding as they recommended it to us.
And the second will stand. My thought process was that we can recommend that to the chamber, and they can incorporate within that 214, the addition, they can incorporate the study and do it on their terms, once we recommend.
I think that's a conversation that you guys could have at TDC, and that when they come back with their presentation in August, they obviously need to clearly define how they're intending to spend their budget. I personally feel like today, trying to have them include a study in this current budget. It's not fleshed out what that study needs to be, who's going to do it, how it's going to be, not appropriated, that's not the right word, but you have to go through different steps for RFP, whether procurement, thank you, that's the word I was looking for, how it's going to be procured. I just feel like that's going to take a little bit more discussion from you guys and maybe a little bit more time, so I don't want to hamstring that moving forward. I would prefer that to be separate. If the chamber ends up being the one in charge of it, that's all great, grand, and wonderful, but I think that conversation needs to be separate from this budget request.
And that's fine, second still stands. I can count to 3. I was hoping that we can get 4 or 5. And so that's why I wanted to say that we can offset with the 214 and put it within the chamber. But if that's the case, we'll be knocking on the door and have to make a public notice about it, should we go forward. And I'm committed that it will be on the agenda on the August meeting.
I just didn't want to hamstring the process of doing the study by that.
That could hurt.
I'd come second.
So you're good, we're clear, are we clear on the motion in the second?
Yes.
No, I'm really appreciate the opportunity to clarify what that was, because I clearly missed the second part of that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion, still have a second?
Yes.
Anybody from the public wish to comment on the motion?
Oh, Bob.
Good morning, it's still morning. Bob McParland, City of Sebastian. And again, first off, I want to say Ms. Daniels always does a fantastic job with the budget to follow, and, you know, she should have a chair. She shouldn't have to stand this whole time. I didn't think this would go on this long. And then the other thing is, Ms. Adams, there is no camera or boat that is worth more than you.
I don't know, I've seen some of those cameras and boats.
And then again, just sitting here, you know, and I've been in the commission chambers when you were going through before, like in months past, it might even be years past, about like the Coastal Connections is coming on. I remember when they first came, it was like, what do they do? But they do with the turtles. And it just seems the return on investment, everything that you give these groups, you're bringing back dollars. So you're playing with a double-edged sword here, okay? We want the people to come in here, visit, spend their dollars. But what happens is they fall in love with here, and then they move here. And then, because I have all the problems, and I'm sure you've heard them all recently, I'm not going to say what it is, but everybody who moves here today wants to close the doors and not allow anybody else into Indian River County because it's going to snowball. But again, I agree with the increase to the chambers. They are doing their jobs. Because every time I read in the newspaper, and you know, I've been here 21 years, it seems like it's record tourist dollars being spent. So the money that you're giving back to these groups promoting the county, they are bringing more in. So the return on investment is phenomenal. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to comment? Seeing none, motion by Commissioner Adams, second by Commissioner Fleischer. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Opposed.
Were you, yes?
Opposed.
3-2.
That motion passes 3-2 with Commissioners Lohr and Moss on the nay side.
Okay.
All right, with that, I would segue right into mine, but we're going to take a 5-minute break. All right, with that, we'll reconvene the June 6th meeting of the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County. And we're moving on to 14A1, which is a matter proposed by myself. So if you would, Commissioners, I would like to talk about the proposal to increase the tourist tax from 4 cents to 5 cents. You know, Florida has been on track for years, and Indian River County, just we talked about, our tourism has increased greatly. And Florida law allows counties to impose the local option tourist or bed tax, of which Indian River County currently levies 4-cent local option tax per statute 125.0140, and it's on transient rentals, leases of accommodations in hotels, motels, apartment, rooming houses, mobile home parks, RV parks, condominiums, vacation rentals, timeshare resorts. Indian River County has the ability to increase the tax an additional penny to 5 cents, and currently those funds are split amongst 3 funds: 1 2/3 cents for tourism development agencies, 1 5/6 cents for beach restoration, and 1/2 cent for the Jackie Robinson Training Center lease obligation. So, Kim, if you would, let's start with the first slide. You'll see that, and then you were all are sent that, you know, by Kristen's staff every month, and you can see, looking at the top green line there, that we're still on a roll. We're on a roll even better than previous years, even with COVID, which was, like Commissioner Adams said in the previous conversation, was pretty good. So we're on a roll here in Indian River County with regards to that. But again, this money that we collect is not an ad valorem tax. It's strictly a bed tax, if you want to call it that. That's what some people call it. It's strictly a bed tax. And that tax is used to, you know, is paid for by people that rent the things I described, such as hotel rooms and things of that nature that are taxed with regards to that. We have the option to raise an additional penny. And I know we had briefly touched on this in the past years when we talked about tourist development money. And I figured this was a great time to do it, with the fact that we were talking about that today and the fact that the revenues are exceeding our expectations. So far of this, and since October 1st, I believe it's the next slide, Kim. Yeah, that one's kind of the wrong way. We need to rotate it if you can, but if you can't, that's okay. We're exceeding $3 million in monies collected right now on the tourist development money so far since October of last year. And it's exceeding our expectations, and that's a very good thing. That means tourists are coming to Indian River County. Tourists are, some of them, like Bob said in the previous engagement, some of them are staying here. But that's okay. We can deal with that. But they're spending their dollars here and making Indian River County a great place to be. So let's go to the next one. This slide here, you can see where I briefly touched on how the money's spent. This is the first, the top of that list is what, according to the 125.0104, what the money can be spent on that's collected, where the first and second penny goes, where the third penny can go, where the fourth, and then where the fifth penny can go with regards to that. This is also the previous Indian River County breakdown. This is how we did the 4 cents that we currently charge. And you can see that previous and the current. And this is the proposal. The last slide is the proposed breakdown of what we're talking about with regards to how this additional penny would be allocated. And it would go to tourist promotion, and it would go to increase the Jackie Robinson lease up to 0.33, I believe. But this tourism promotion, with regards to that, we want this money to be allocated as much as we can, that 0.67 cents, and Kristen and Dylan will discuss more on why it's not the whole cent and how it's allocated. But we want that to be earmarked for beach restoration projects and go in the beach restoration fund. Why? Beaches are getting more expensive. We all know that. We talk about, it seems we talk about it every meeting, so I wanted to bring it up this meeting again. Beaches, we talk about beaches all the time. So, but that's a good thing. But with regards to that, they are getting more expensive. The cost of just doing it in general, the cost of sand, the cost of fuel, everything. It's just, it's certainly one of those things. The next slide. So this is the analysis of what that additional 5th cent and can generate, and overall it could generate. So we're looking at probably around an additional $1 million based on the current facts and figures that we have of an additional $1 million in money that 5th cent would generate by charging it, which may not be a lot of money in the name of $6, $7, $8 million beach restoration projects, but anything helps, and we have the ability to do it, so why not take advantage of it with regards to a tax that our local residents don't pay unless they go rent a hotel room for a weekend just to get out of their house, or if they have a water leak in their house, right?
Exactly.
So I know how you feel.
Or roof
But, so other than that, 34 counties, I think can go to the next slide. That may be all of them, actually. There's that one. 34 counties in the state of Florida they're in the same position that we are, and they charge the 5th cent. We were not one of them. Our local counties, Brevard, Indian River, Martin, and St. Lucie, Brevard, Martin, and St. Lucie charge that 5th cent tax. Some of our other surrounding counties charge 6% or can charge 6%, but they are in the high impact areas of tourism, such as Osceola County, Tampa, Pinellas, Hillsborough, Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County, Volusia County. They have a high impact of tourism due to Disney, due to Daytona, due to Palm Beach and the amount of people they have. So they're able to levy an additional 6 cents, which under law we don't meet the qualifications to go up to 6 cents. So, but we were able to go up to 5 cent or 5%, however you want to call it. So I just think it's something we ought to do. I'm not going to really dwell on it and make a great presentation, because I think in the backup material, if you read it, I think it spelled it out as to what we need to do in regards to this. But I would appreciate give you my recommendation and appreciate a motion and a second to move this forward. And with that, I think first of all, before we have any more questions, I want to turn it over to Dylan to explain part of this with regards to how this is done.
Sure. Certainly available for any specific questions from the commissioners. I just want to be very clear, and I think Commissioner Ehrman had hit this, was that what we call our 5th penny, or really the 6th penny under the statute, specifically is for the construction, reconstruction, or renovation of a facility either publicly owned or operated, or publicly owned and operated by the owner of a professional sports franchise or other lessee with sufficient experience and financial capability to operate such a facility. It's also for other sort of professional sports venues. And then finally, it can be used for the promotion of tourism along the lines of the answer I provided to Commissioner Adams during the previous discussion. So that penny could be used for only those specific things under the statute. To utilize it for anything else, such as for beaches, we'd have to kind of rework how we use all the other pennies that we've talked about in our code. So as outlined in the recommendation, was simply a request from Commissioner Ehrman to research further how we could utilize that additional penny for beach uses. But I may have caused more confusion and more fog on the issue, but certainly happy to answer what the statute allows or what our code allows with regards to the additional penny.
Right, with this, I wanted to come back in the July 11th meeting with a recommendation on how that penny would be spent. But in order to do that, we have to talk about it and then authorize the additional penny, correct?
Yeah, so first off, the board would have to authorize, an ordinance to be drawn up. It would have to be passed by a supermajority, and from there, then we get the right to have the 5th penny. We certainly could bifurcate the concept and get that authorization, and then direct staff from there to move forward on any additional research or drafting with regards to moving the penny around. Or you can incorporate that in as part of that ordinance. I defer to whichever way the board wishes to go.
Right, and with that also, we want to make sure that we can get this in so it becomes effective on October 1st. So, and the clerk has clerk's office has told Kristen and myself that they could make this happen by getting the notifications out to the proper people that charge this tax, such as the hotels, RV parks, motels, vacation rentals, et cetera. So, any further questions? Kristen, is there anything that you want to add, or anybody have a question for the budget office? Any questions? Anybody? With that, I'll leave it up to y'all. What questions do y'all have? I can't make the motion, but I don't know, y'all let me know what you think about it.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate all of your work on beach renourishment. I know that you've been instrumental in moving it forward. Local history is fascinating. I'm gonna back it up a minute. When the tourist tax referendum passed, and that was on March 10th of 1987, it was at a 2% rate, and for the first 2 years, it came to a total of $503,440, and 96% of that was spent on sand and 94% was spent on sand and beach renourishment, and only 6% was spent on tourist development. And I just find it interesting that today we're struggling here with that relationship, and by that I mean between tourist development and beach renourishment, because on the one hand, we have, and we just discussed this, we have an abundance, a surplus of funding for tourist development, but we have a surfeit, we have a lack of funding for beach renourishment, even though the origin of the whole referendum and what people, and not only referendum, this is what people voted for. So people voted to replenish the beaches, and as we can see, we've come very far afield of that. So I'm not prepared to support this at this time, and I discussed with staff. I think we need to understand the whole history of this, and having discussed with staff, preparing a presentation that would take us back, I don't know, 10, 12, 20 years, and I talked to Ms. Daniels about this, however far back we need to go to understand which sectors within our beaches have been redone, at what points in time, and with what funding. Was it county funding? Was it FEMA? Was it FDEP or some other agency? Just so we have I'd like to know the larger picture and place this within context for myself to understand that. And that's not something that's going to happen today. This is something, that I requested, and I understand it will be forthcoming in the future. And there was no date certain on this. I don't know how big a project that is, but I think it's important for all of us to understand just, what are we spending on the beaches and what's the source of the funding. Right now, as I understand it, there's no routine maintenance, if you will. We don't do that. What happens is there's a storm, and then we spend the emergency funding to repair the storm, and at the time that we repair the beaches from the storm, we also correct any beach erosion that has occurred in the interim, between storms, if you will, whatever the normal beach erosion was. And this comes from my conversation with staff, so please feel free to jump in and correct if I misunderstood anything in our conversations. So I would, as I said, I would appreciate having, more information on this. And while I appreciate, again, all the work you've done, and we certainly do need to address beach renourishment, it's critical, I'm not prepared to support this at this time.
Commissioner Ross, I would tell you, this is not all about beach renourishment. While that money needs to go, some of it needs to go to beach renourishment. Beach renourishment is getting more expensive. This is about allowing us to use the exercise to add an additional penny to our bed tax for those people that visit Indian River County that come because we have nice beaches here. and other events. If you read the backup material clearly and you look at where the money is spent and how that's laid out with regards to how we currently spend money and how we do money, this is what we're talking about today. Yes, I'm very well aware of beach renourishment, and that's really not the reason for this today. This to levy some additional funds that we have the ability to charge that 5th cent that the state of Florida allows in order to allow us to promote tourism by making our beaches tourist friendly and making them what people come to Vero Beach, Sebastian, Indian River Shores, and Indian River County for. Probably the next meeting on June 20th, we'll probably talk about beaches again with regards to Sector 7 and Sector 4 again, but that's not why we're here today. So to talk about a study on beach renourishment is to me is not apropos to this particular discussion. I'm talking about a tax, an additional penny on the tax, and I think it's spelled out in the narrative that I wrote. That's why I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time discussing it, because if you read the backup material, it's there, and in regards to this sheet, it tells you how the money would be spent with regards to tourist promotion. And even though this would go into the Beach Renourishment Fund, yes, that's about the extent of where I'm going with this, with beach renourishment. So, any further questions? Madam Vice Chairman?
Okay. I have a couple questions. Commissioner Moss, I am not really understanding what your concerns are. Can you restate those? Like, is your concern that this is a tax? Is your concern how the money is going to be spent? Is your concern that you don't think we need it? I'm not really following.
Sure. I think we do need to figure out the funding for beach renourishment. We just got done discussing tourist development, and it appears that we have more than enough. We didn't even have it appropriated until this meeting, so there's no deficit there. My concern is with beach renourishment. And again, that's why I want to understand how much of it we actually pay for, because we rely, it's my understanding, we rely greatly on FEMA and other agencies for that funding. So I'm not clear why we would need to I don't see why we would need to increase it. And by the way, I'd be interested to know going forward, I mean, we throw this off as well. It doesn't matter if we increase it because we're not paying it. But I wonder what percentage of our residents are taking staycations now. I don't know that I would say that necessarily, that we're not paying it. I know a lot of people, but this is anecdotal, but I know a lot of people who do stay within the county for vacation. We've got a great county.
So your concern is that part of this money would be used for tourism promotion, which you feel is not needed, but you also have concerns about it being used for beach renourishment, which you feel is needed, but you don't want to use it through this method?
Well, I also don't know if, anytime you raise a tax, it can have unintended consequences. We could raise the tax and maybe, perhaps in effect, be lowering our rate of tourism. Maybe people do notice. I know I get tired of all the extra fees that are charged, that are tacked on to a hotel bill, resort fees and just extra fees. I mean, I think people are becoming more attuned to that now, just generally, but I'd be interested to know. I mean, that's just my own experience that I'm speaking from, and others. As I said earlier, it's anecdotal. But I would like to hear a more compelling reason why we need to increase it, because it's still a tax. And I don't hear that.
I think we got this would allow.
Yeah.
This would allow for additional funds for beach restoration. It would. It would also allow the budget department, and Kristen, please correct me if I'm wrong, it would allow y'all to move funds around should you need to in different areas of the tourist development money. I mean, if you needed to, even though you have to designate where those funds go. Maybe you can answer that better than I can.
Coming back.
We look for direction from the board as to what funds those pennies go into. I just want to be very clear, Kristen doesn't sit there and go, hey, it looks like we need a little bit more of the money to go to beaches this year.
That's why I want her to explain it. I want me to explain it.
Yeah, it's,
We
there are
can.
regulations on which each of the cents can be used for, and basically, the half a cent we use for now at Jackie Robinson is for maintenance. We also use optional sales tax for the capital portion of that lease obligation. The 4th and the 5th cent have to be used towards capital only or debt. So basically, if you levy a full 5 cents, cents 4 and cent 6 have to go to tourism promotion. So tourism promotion is going to get an increase from this. Now, as the agenda item stated, we need more time to look into this. But another option could be to lessen that half a penny to Jackie Robinson down to a quarter penny, because our lease obligation is going from $800,000 this year to $400,000 next year, 200 capital, 200 maintenance. So that would also free up an additional quarter of a penny to go to beaches. But just so everyone knows, this additional penny, no matter how you slice it, would increase the 0.67 tourism promotion gets to a full 2.
Okay, so you answered a couple of my questions, because one of them was how much longer and what is our obligation to Jackie Robinson, and when does that go away?
It's 27, 28, 28, 29. It's a little interesting in the agreement because it's for 10 years, but it says there's 11 years worth of payments. So I'd need to talk to Dylan about exactly how many payments we have to make in those 10 years. But Jackie Robinson also has renewals. So it's up to you all. If you wish to renew, we continue on. It also has an escalator for CPI, so we'd need to watch that in the capital maintenance. That starts in lease year 7, which would be 24, 25. So it's a little gray at this point, but I do believe we could back off a little bit of Jackie Robinson, supplant that with optional sales tax, and then free that up for the beaches as well. But just so everyone knows, TDC will get more money from this. There's no other way around.
Right, I understand that. Dylan and or Kristen, walk me through in like kindergarten terms, what pennies, I heard that, thank you.
If you could pull up the slide that had that made.
For everybody to understand.
I mean, because we're talking about, I'm just kidding. We're talking about 5 pennies, but really then we keep talking about the 6th penny because we don't do one of the, like, just, I need a little bit of a flow chart.
Yeah. I want to get back to some other comments.
How do you think I felt bringing this up today? They had to walk me through it.
Oh,
But
my
I still
goodness.
can't explain it. I understand it, but I still, you don't ask me to explain
The
it.
matrix.
So,
One more. Oh, no. There you go. Okay.
Okay.
So at the top, it says the first and third the first and second as well as the third pennies can be used for anything.
Okay.
At the top there. The 4th, and that's actually, it's our 5th, but under the statute it's referred to as the 6th because we cannot levy the 5th because we're not a high impact tourism county. So it is our 5th, but the statute says it's the 6th.
So for purposes of this conversation, we're going to refer to it as the 6th, but really it's the 5th?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's where I keep getting confused, so I
didn't want to go there.
I know.
I'm sorry.
It's awful. No. Well,
it's
but we'll get through
necessary.
it. So first, second, and third can you be used for anything. 4th and 6th can be used for tourism promotion, but where sports stadium differs in 4th and 6th versus 1, 2, and 3 is in 4th and 6th, it's only for the debt service and capital improvements.
Okay.
At Jackie Robinson, our lease obligation is 50% maintenance, 50% capital. So I cannot use 4 or 6 for the capital. So what I was saying is, I could decrease that half a penny, which is now too much, to fund what's going down to 400,000, because a half a penny is gonna get us about 500,000. So what we could do is reduce that to a quarter. It'd be roughly 250,000. That would cover the maintenance portion, and we would use the optional sales tax to cover the remaining capital portion, which would be cut down to 150, because you have an extra 50 from this penny.
Okay. And it has been our commission policy to use the first and second cent to also fund beach restoration. We are not obligated to do that. That is something that we can do.
So if you go to where it says current breakdown, we are using 1.83 cents for beaches out of the first 3 cents.
Okay.
Yes.
And the fourth cent, we cannot use for beaches,
Or the 6 cents.
or the sixth cent.
And we don't have debt at Dodgertown because that's serviced by the state. So
Okay.
in order to stay with that funding maintenance, you could only use cents 4 and 6 for tourism.
Okay.
So what would end up happening is you would have, if we freed up the quarter cent from Jackie Robinson, you'd have 2.75 for beaches and 0.25 for sports. That would suck up your whole 3 cents, and then cents 4 and 6 would go toward tourism promotion.
Okay, because your proposal, now that I'm maybe understanding a little bit more of all these flowing of cents, is if we were to adopt the sixth cent, we would reallocate funding of the first 2-3 cents.
Right, that's what I meant, she could.
You would have to
do some different
reallocate
stuff
all
with
of them because the code is very specific in which cents are funded for which. And
Okay.
so it's a change of the code. It's not a huge deal, but we would have to change the code and the outside agency funding policy to reflect the different sets.
Okay.
But it can be done.
Oh, I have no doubt it can be done. Woo. How it's going to be done sounds very confusing, but I'm sure it can be done, and it's probably much easier than it sounds. And your feeling for why we might need to adopt the sixth cent is to help increase funding for TDC and beaches, or just to provide more of a cushion? I read the backup, but I just,
I would personally like to see it because beaches seem to get more expensive every year, the money go in it, but that's what we want. By doing this today, we need to come back on the 11th with an ordinance change to allow staff to figure out make sure how legally we can do it, which is probably what she's telling you,
okay.
which is probably what we can do.
And does this, now process-wise, I don't know if this is Dylan or Kristen or both, process-wise, is this something that has to go to referendum, or is this something that we solely by supermajority can levy?
Under the statute, it's simply a supermajority vote of this board.
Okay, and at what point then does it start being allocated? Is that something, like, is there a time frame? We have to do it before budget, or?
It's the second month, it's the first day of the second month following when the supermajority vote happens. So, or the ordinance, right?
Or is set for, so that's kind of the minimum. So if, and to the way that Kristen's describing it is the first day of the second month following approval. So let's assume the board had voted in July of this year. There'd be August and then September. And so I believe it was September, but I know the clerk's office was saying they would prefer that it would get moved back to October 1st to give them more time for advertising, contacting our folks. And thus, in the statute, there's an out clause from that which says, or, another specific date is directed under the ordinance. But Kristen, correct me if you had a different conversation with Jeff.
Yeah, no, it could be as early as the first day of the second month or any month after that you deem appropriate. So we would prefer October 1st. It would make it easier. The clerk does need time to send out mailings to all those folks who levy the tax, collect the tax, so that they can change their accounting software, their notifications, their billing and everything, because they're gonna have to assess more tax from the folks who are paying this.
So if you, conceptually, if this is something that we want to move forward with and you want it to be in place by October 1st, or be able to be levied by October 1st, back me up to where we would have to approve this.
So the July date works, but also technically the August 14th meeting would technically work as well.
So August 14th, July preferable, August 14th would be the last day we could have a vote.
But I actually think there's a August 29th meeting as well, but then we start getting really tight in that time frame. But yes, I believe.
I would just like to say, if it's going to happen August 29th, just please keep in mind, we have the budget hearings in September. I would need to rework all of the numbers, give more money to TDC, give more money to beaches, reduce the funding to Jackie Robinson, and play with those numbers a
So the
little bit.
29th would, I guess where I'm going, let me just, is we seem to have some time
Yes.
to have a discussion. So we don't have to decide today. And there seems to be some more maybe work or not work, but just, I'm happy to entertain it. I want to understand a little bit more about the allocation of dollars and what would go to what. So,
That's what I'm asking today is to let's go ahead and approve this and allow staff to come back with an ordinance to see how they can allocate the money properly, how it gets allocated properly. And also, what I forgot to mention originally was, I also want to use this to ease the temptation of us to dip into the 1 cent penny
Okay.
sales tax.
I can totally respect trying to find other sources to add money to the beach renourishment pot and projects. I agree that they are getting vastly expensive and highly competitive, and it seems like we're needing to do more and more of them on a weekly basis. But let me make a proposal. Could we ask staff to maybe come back with some more information of how it would look and be allocated, and then make the determination if we want to move forward? Can we have like a little, I don't know, presentation or a little bit more information?
So I could throw this option out to the board. It's kind of a tight time frame, but not as bad when we used to have every Tuesday board meetings, is maybe a draft ordinance. If we can get this thrown together, maybe a draft ordinance and with the conceptual basis of what we've talked about here for either June 20th or July 11th, which would then set you up for the actual ordinance advertisement and public hearing on July 11th or August 14th. But I'm kind of speaking out of turn if, John, you're concerned about that.
I think I'd be concerned about the June 20th and the fact that we're kind of knee-deep in the budget right now.
Well, I think that, again, I understand what you're saying, but I think that's my intention today, is to get the board to have direction on this, to have staff come back, because we have to approve the ordinance no matter what we do today, correct?
So I'll throw out another idea. I could tee up, if the board was comfortable with this, I could tee up drafting the ordinance, having it advertised, showing a plan of redistribution of the pennies and adopting the 5th penny for July 11th. If the board was comfortable with what was presented, the board could approve it as is. If the board was comfortable, wanted to make some small changes, they could approve it as amended. Or if they were not totally comfortable with it at that point, they could open the public hearing and continue it to the August 15th date for final approval, such that you've got something teed up in front of you for the July 11th meeting in the event you're comfortable and ready to move forward.
But clearly, let me interrupt you, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is my recommendation. It was in the backup material. It's my recommendation to the board for the chair to accept a motion and a second with a vote in the supermajority to increase the tourist bed tax 1 penny or to 5 cents, then direct staff to research and draft a code change to allow as much of the additional penny to go toward beach renourishment as possible and bring the ordinance back for action on July 11th.
So I'm just reading body language and the comments that have already been made, and I don't think if you want to vote today, you're going to get the supermajority. I do think that what would seem, what I'm kind of hearing everybody say, is they would like a little bit more information and to see, if you got to do the ordinance, that's fine, but I don't think that's what we're really asking for. I think what we'd like to see is kind of the numbers breakdown and the trends and what you're going to anticipate receiving, what's going to go to TDC and that kind of stuff. Because what I'm hearing from Kristen, and I understand, Dylan, if we were to do an ordinance, you would have to have advertising time and all that stuff. But what I'm hearing from Kristen is if we were to take the vote on the ordinance in August, she still has plenty of time, but ultimately the October 1st date is kind of the preference, but that doesn't mean that we could take a vote later and have it start later. It's just the preference would be for it to start and coincide with the budget, but it could be done if it takes a little bit longer to have the conversation so everybody understands what is being asked and proposed, because I think there's still some confusion.
If that were the case, we would then just handle it with a budget amendment, and we would come back and say, here's where the revenue's going. Is this where you want the expenses to go?
So there's kind of a time certain, but at the same time, it's a very flexible time certain that if it takes longer to have the discussion, it would probably make people more comfortable, I'm gathering.
And I want to be clear on something Commissioner Adams said, and I know it's in the memo, but I was trying to refer to the ordinance itself, not this motion. Technically, whatever direction the board gives today doesn't have to be by supermajority today. It's when the ordinance adopting the 5th penny gets approved, we need to have the 4 votes. Now, arguably sitting up here, if you saw that there was only 3-2 vote for doing the 5th penny, you would pretty much be able to figure out that there's probably not going to be a supermajority. But I just wanted to make sure that that technical point was cleared up.
I just, for what it's worth, I think if we were to bring back some additional information, I know Commissioner Moss has requested additional information. Obviously, I don't even know what pennies we're on at this point, but.
This is not a personal thing to me.
Right.
This is hey, there's an additional funding. There's additional funding out there that we can take advantage of through our tourism and help our tourism. Like Dylan said, we don't necessarily need a supermajority vote, correct, until the proposal comes back. So we could take it off and do the back half of it. We need staff to direct and research a draft code change to allow as much of the additional penny to go towards beach renourishment or show the distribution of how that additional penny would be spent. I mean, I would recommend that to y'all today then, if you're uncomfortable with trying to go ahead and approve the supermajority.
I agree that it is in our best interest to explore options for beach renourishment funding. I do think that we need to have those discussions, and I'm happy to have those discussions. And I'm happy to ask staff to kind of flesh this out a little bit more and bring maybe something, not that this wasn't concrete by any means, this is a great conversation starter, but I need like columns with pennies and what's going to be moved and something.
But they were going to have to do that anyways.
Right. So maybe we can ask them to do that, and then we can discuss if we want to move forward
I'm good with that.
with that, so we have a better clarity. I mean, I don't know. I've been doing a lot of talking, so I'll stop now.
Counselor?
Well, I'll certainly, is that a motion?
I'll be happy to make that a motion. It's a narrative of a motion, but
But I heard from Commissioner Ehrman, it was kind of the second half of the thing, of the recommendation. So it was something of the lines of requesting staff to research code changes regarding as much of the use of an additional fifth penny as possible. Is that kind of your motion?
right, to include potential reallocations of other pennies to offset the increase in marketing. So, because what I'm hearing you say is that you kind of want the marketing amount to stay the same, but the goal is to try to increase the dollars going into the beach renourishment pot. So, yes, and part of that is how the other ones would be reallocated to maximize that.
No, I'm okay with
Again,
that,
very
because I would
narrative-y, I'm
wanna know
sorry.
that- I want to know that too. I'll second. Any further comments or questions? Commissioner Fleischer?
I'd like to hear the motion. Again? A lot has been said.
I would like to hear it again,
I'm sorry
too.
about, yeah, but you made it, Commissioner, so I figured, let's go to the source. Because then I heard Counselor kind of review it a little bit, and there's been so much discussion, and I just wanted to hit the other discussion, too. So I understand is basically there's been directing staff to research changing the code to allow as much of an additional penny to go toward beach renourishment as possible. Research. But I will offer this. I would almost look at it, if the board wants, is it's almost like maybe on July 11th as a permission to advertise, which maybe we would research that issue, come to the board and show what an ordinance might look like, and then the board say yes or yes with some changes. That's the one we want you to advertise, and then we would bring back that ordinance at a public hearing in August.
I'm not committing one way or another today, and I'm not asking my fellow commissioners to commit one way or another today. Today, my goal is to get some more information so we can have a more in-depth conversation and then determine how the board wants to move forward.
Can I ask you a question? Do we need to vote just to request additional information? I've already requested it, so I'm not clear what we're doing here. Obviously, we need additional information.
That's usual. I think the request was for us to staff to bring back in a public setting the breakdown and analysis of how the pennies are used, how the pennies could be redistributed, both under our code and under the statute, and then seek further direction from the board.
To direct
And-
staff, we would need to vote or come to consensus to do that as a group.
There's some priorities with the budget, and so if it's a majority of the board's desire to do that, then we'll do that. But if there's not, then.
But it could be by consensus, so
Yes, as well.
I think there's consensus,
Why?
at least to get additional information.
But, okay, just point of order, there is a motion and a second on the floor. So
So we either-
consensus or motion will work, there's a motion. Motion takes precedent over consensus. We have to deal with that, and then we can go from there.
We would have to remove the second and the motion before we can consider taking consensus or a motion. Correct, Counselor?
Yes, but I wanted to be very clear as what I understood was the information request, because I don't want there to be, is the information that staff and is going to bring back, and when I say staff, myself, Kristen, John, is a discussion about the pennies, how the pennies could be reallocated, what the pennies could be used for, and potential, revenue from those pennies. That's what we plan to bring back, and just want to make sure that the motion and second are comfortable with that being basically the information that'll be brought back.
Well, we need to make this clear. We've got, we're talking about the pennies. My original recommendation to the board, we're talking about the fifth penny.
Correct.
Is what we need,
And how that impacts the previous four.
So why don't we do something like, make a recommendation, I'll make a recommendation to y'all to have staff bring back what an additional fifth penny would do, how it would be distributed,
That's all included.
How it would be distributed in order to, so we can look at, do we want to increase to that fifth penny and call for a supermajority vote to increase the tourist tax at a later date? Because we're talking about the fifth penny, we're not talking about the what we already levy.
But that's
But
basically my
when you
motion.
look at that fifth penny,
That's my motion.
but let me finish. When you look at that fifth penny, you're gonna have to look at all 5 pennies, but you're gonna have to, you're talking about the fifth, but you're gonna have to look at how you're allocating all 5,
Agreed.
correct?
And that's what's contained in Commissioner Adams' motion. And then we would also,
All I'm hearing is pennies. We need
Yeah.
to, this is the discussion about, what I originally brought up was about the fifth penny, but we need to discuss all 5 pennies and then come back with a possible ordinance change, and then we can vote on it at whenever staff's ready to present it.
and as part of that, we would also honor the Commissioner Moss's request for the history. And then we could also potentially look at extrapolating the projections into the future to see what, 5 years, how much money could potentially, if assuming the tourist levels stay the same, what could be the impact over a 5-year period? Yes?
Wow.
So this conversation is just as confusing as which penny we're talking about. But the motion is to yes, bring information back so we can have a more in-depth conversation about what the commission wants to do. For clarification purposes, Commissioner Moss, I am not asking anybody today to vote in favor of raising taxes or fees or whatever you want to call it. I am just asking us to give direction as a group to staff to bring back more information, so then we can have the discussion that would need to be had with all the information to determine if we want to move forward. So if your concern is it's going to be perceived one way, that is in no way this motion, but there is a motion.
Okay. Can I clarify
Yes.
a little bit there? We're hearing a lot of information, and, I wait for you to, so today's motion is purely exploratory information, the cultivation of facts that will be brought back so we can, if that's allowable or decided upon, to make the motion which was intended by the original, our chairman, then that will be the time, not today. There is no change, no alteration, no commitment. I mean, I'm hearing things of, and it's fine to go back to the history, but there was a time in Indian River County's history where all they had was sand and oranges. So the oranges took way, and the grapefruits took way to something called greening and some other factors, and we have very little left. And as far as the beaches, yeah, we used to send, $10,000, and it fixed the whole beach. Just put it out there. That no longer occurs. We're talking about multiple millions and millions and millions of dollars that will never be achieved by a fifth penny. However, with the changes, with how FEMA treats the beach renourishment, sand or damage reassessment, it's been very difficult. I get it. There's an interest. But we can't look back at history and say, hey, we used to do it this way. Because if that's the way, then most of the horse feed stores would still be in business if that pesky little guy named Henry Ford didn't get in the way and start bringing the cars around. Times change. We have to be responsive to conditions and situations, and we have to grow. But I think we need a lot more information before we need to make changes, because we will never get to, and again, I commend the thought process for sand renourishment laced in there. It'll never, ever recover the amount necessary to address the needs and concerns of beach renourishment. But it can sure help, and it can sure help in other areas. But if we learned anything today, we already have an abundance. I'm not concerned about the 5th cent because it has not altered the tourism to the north of us, to the south of us. But I am concerned is our providers, the people who run, the people who make it happen, the very tourism partners who are struggling and surviving as it is, even though it sounds negligible. It's only a penny. But when it adds up, when a family wants to come here, and we're looking at the amount, it's not just the staycations, so we would be paying, but we're looking at the individuals who want to come here, there's just a little more spike. Well, their taxes are rising in other areas, so they may be remiss to come. And it may sound so negligible, it's only a penny. But a penny here, a penny there, a penny here, that adds the dollars. And that might be the breaking point. So I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it is. And I think this is, and maybe I'm overstating, but I think we need to look at a lot more data before we move forward and make this change. So I'm happy to support staff review and to ensure that we're going in the right direction. Thank you.
In my literature, in my backup, I sent to each of you, an increase in the tourist tax from 4 to 5 cents would generate approximately another $1 million per year. With a change to the county code, the penny would be proposed to be added to the Beach Restoration Fund and will reduce the temptation to use the 1 cent sales tax, which we all pay on goods and services. Some additional research, and I've asked this in the narrative, some additional research by staff will need to be done to determine how the additional penny can be divided appropriately. And the recommendation was then to direct staff to research and draft a code change to allow as much of the additional penny to go towards beach renourishment as possible and bring the ordinance back for action on July 11th. So I think that's what we're going to do. That's what we need to do. This is not like I said, this is not a personal achievement or anything by me. I just think it's a funding source that we need to look at all sorts of funding. This is additional funding. It's not a huge impact on a family coming to Indian River County to have that additional cent on their hotel room. That's what you're doing. If you haven't spent a lot of money, go to Disney and see how much money you're spending when you go there, but they still go. And they're still going to come here. 34 of the counties, all of our surrounding counties charge it. I think it's something that we need to look at as additional funding source for the way the money could be changed and moved to help pay for Jackie Robinson, to help pay for beach renourishment and other type things. So it's just a way of seeking additional funds. That's all where I'm going with this, and that was always my intention. I am good with having staff come back with additional information, so y'all are clear on that, because the only reason I may be more clear on it because I had to do the research to provide this material. So I can tell you that I am comfortable with it. We may not have the supermajority today based on the fact that y'all need more information, and I'm good with that. We're trying to get this in for budget purposes so the clerk could get the message out should we approve it. But that is the intention, and that's where I was going with it from the beginning. So, any other questions? We have a motion by Commissioner Adams. Who seconded? You seconded it?
You did.
No, you did.
I did. Okay, I didn't know if
You
you
remember?
changed and you wanted to do it from the original, but I will second it.
So, Mr. Chairman, when you read that, you said that was your original intention. So, basically, this is, once again, fact-finding, assessment, and it's gonna come back to us, that we're not taking any action in altering the 1 cent, the one additional cent, or any other funding principle, or how it's to be divided, because again, we need to have a second vote for, which would require a supermajority.
You have to have an ordinance change.
Today's wouldn't be, but once it's an ordinance change, it would be a four out
Yeah,
of
and the
5.
thing was, that to have a supermajority, you'd have to have a supermajority when you finally do change it to make the one, to make the one.
So once again, your original intention was to get it out there. You did not
I think it was
want to
clearly
change
stated
the
in the
1 cent.
document, yes.
That the intention now is to ensure that we're going to have the information that obviously necessary, as we're hearing from
Correct,
all of the fellow commissioners.
correct.
I just want to clear for
Further
the public that there's no change being made today.
I have you have any questions?
I don't, public.
I have a motion and a second. Anybody from the public wish to speak?
Oh, Bob, somebody different.
Bob McParland, City of Sebastian. My mother probably should have named me Simon, because I try to keep stuff simple. And I hope, again, the board recognizes what a gem Ms. Daniels is, as she explained everything. This, Mr. Ehrman, I gotta thank you for the courage to bring this forward, because it's like taxes. Like, people are thinking you're like King George, no taxation without representation. And this is primarily going to be $1 on every $100 spent by non-residents. I just earlier met a gentleman who visited from the Netherlands, and now he's a resident here. And again, the 2 counties to the north, Brevard and Volusia, charge 5 cents on the dollar, and the 2 to the south, St. Lucie and Martin County, we charge 3. To the west, Okeechobee is 3. And I'm in full agreement. I mean, I think this $1 million generated is going to come from a source primarily that is not the residents of Indian River County. Again, it's going to be $1 million that is going to be spent by this board anyways to either fix the beaches or pay off the debt. And I mean, it's funny, at the Jackie Robinson Center, it brings in more money now than when the Dodgers played there. I mean, it's because it's a year-round thing. So I commend you for bringing this forward, and I don't see any problem with further discussion and looking at however you want to dissect all these different pennies. But again, thank you, Ms. Daniels, for being able to explain it in layman's terms. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public wish to comment? Seeing none, I have a motion by Commissioner Adams, seconded by myself. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. All right, moving on. That was back to County Attorney's Matters, 13B, Economic Development Council appointment.
Good afternoon. Our healthcare industry representative on EDC has been vacant for a while. That was previously Ralph Turner from Cleveland Clinic. We've received an application from Stevie Ray Stark, who works at Cleveland Clinic, to fill the vacancy. County Attorney's Office simply recommends the board to consider the application and to determine whether you wish to appoint the applicant to fill the vacant position.
Move approval.
Second.
Is that Commissioner Fleischer, second?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion by Commissioner Adams, second by Commissioner Fleischer. Anybody from the public wish to comment on the motion? Seeing none, Commissioners, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. 13C, Environmental Lands Acquisition Panel appointment. Counselor?
All right. Well, we have actually 2 applicants for the one vacant natural resources position on our Environmental Lands Acquisition Panel. County Attorney's Office simply recommends that the board consider the applications to determine whether you wish to appoint one of these applicants to fill that vacant position.
I thought we had 2.
We did actually. Last time, I believe it was Heather Stapleton was appointed to fill one of the 2 natural resource positions that left the other natural resource position still vacant.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move approval of Mr. Jeff Beal.
I'll second.
I I have a motion to approve Jeff Beal by Commissioner Adams, second by Commissioner Moss. Anybody from the public wish to comment on the motion? Seeing none? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, before we move on, I just want to let my fellow commissioners know that I have also appointed the District 1 representative. I sent that resume to Dylan, or if it didn't go through, I will send it to you today. But that should finalize our ELAP committee, and that resume will be on the 20th under informational items, I'm sure.
Okay, thanks. Mr. DeBraw?
No, I'm
I thought you had something. Okay, I thought you had something.
He's the next item. He's getting ready.
Anxious to
All right, we're
work.
at 13D. We were at 13D, approval of mediation settlement for a parcel of right-of-way located at 6600 65th Street, Vero Beach, owned by Harish and Deepti Sadwani. Counselor?
Maybe we should bring the dog back for a little levity, but that's okay. Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the county
Yeah, we can
attorney's
have one.
office. Yeah, appoint the dog assistant commissioner or something. On behalf of the county attorney's office, bring forward purchase of a parcel for 66th Avenue right-of-way and stormwater pond owned by the Sedwanis. This parcel is on 66th Avenue at the northwest corner of 65th Street. It's 19 acres in size. You can see the outline of it there. About 19 and a half acres in size. The county needed 7.8 acres of it to be used for 5.5 acres of right-of-way and a little better than 2 acres for a pond site. The property is zoned A1 agricultural up to 1 unit per 5 acres. The improvements on the property consist of some fencing along with some trees and flow wells. We filed suit against the Sedwanis back in 2020, and the parties entered into a stipulated order of take in December of 2020, where the property was conveyed to the county, and the county deposited the sum of about $314,000 into the registry of the court. We went ahead and did a little bit of discovery in this matter and then decided to set it for a mediation using Tony Rodriguez as the mediator. Mr. Rodriguez was formerly with Broward County Attorney's Office. He was the main litigator in their eminent domain section, and we have used him with good success in the past. To start the mediation, our offer, as far as our appraiser valued the property at $374,000 for the right-of-way take, and the entire parcel was valued at $644,000. The Sedwanis appraiser and engineers had it drastically different. They valued the property at $100,000 per acre, and they opined that 90,000 cubic feet of fill would need to be added as a cost to cure. That would need to be added to the remainder property to prevent flooding. And that price tag came out to be about $800,000 for the 90,000 cubic yards of fill. When we went into the mediation, staff had, or their total ask as far as their total damages for the partial take was $1.8 million in total with land and cost to cure and severance damages. So there was a big difference. Staff discussed this matter and thought if we would be able to come away with a whole take that would provide a benefit in 3 different ways. Now, number one, we wouldn't have to talk about the cost to cure as far as the $800,000 price tag. We didn't want to start to get involved in that discussion. We didn't think it would be fruitful. Secondly, we would come away from the mediation with something. In this case, it would be 12 acres of additional property that we could either sell, use for some county purpose or something like that. And lastly, it fell in line with the board's direction as to try and work with the landowner to come out with the best possible outcome for both sides. The Sedwanis bought this property with the 19 and a half acres back in 2004, and at the mediation, Mrs. Sedwani said that this was going to be the family compound. That was her term as far as the compound. Her plan and their plan was to have each of the family members get a 5-acre parcel, with the parents getting one, the 2 daughters each getting one, and the son, who attended the mediation, also got a parcel. We kind of thought at the mediation that this was unusual, that all 3 children would come back to Vero, but if you take a look at what has happened, the eldest daughter and her husband have come back to Sebastian, and they have opened Iconic Dermatology, as both of them are dermatologists. The son is back here in the financial area, works in the financial field. The youngest daughter is also attending medical school and will specialize in dermatology, and also plans to come back to the area. The Iconic Dermatology building in Sebastian is one of the Sedwani buildings that's there. They have recently purchased the old Calico Corners building on State Road 60. That has been renovated and opened as the second location for their Iconic Dermatology building. So there was some substance to back up her claim. We went through about 6 back and forths between the parties, and came up with a agreement where the county would pay $58,000 per acre for the remainder parcel. There would be no severance damages, no cost to cure or anything like that. It would be a straight real estate purchase. That would be $1.1 million, a little bit better than that. We also would get credit for the $314,000 that we paid in earlier, making the final payment to the Sedwanis at $819,056. As you know, there are costs involved. Originally, the Sedwanis experts wanted $105,000 in costs, where the county went over those bills, took a look especially at the appraisal bill, and compromised those down to $63,000. Attorney's fees are always a tough part to swallow in these things, but the fee is set by statute, and we really have nothing to do about it, nothing that we can do about it. The attorney had represented the Sedwanis for quite some time. He is entitled to one-third of the first $250,000 benefit to his client, and 25% of any benefit gained thereafter. So the attorney's fees in this matter were $174,291. So the total payment that would be going out in this matter to resolve it all is $1,056,447,000. This would be accomplished by a regular closing in eminent domain. If the county buys more property than it actually needs, the old owners, in this case the Sedwanis, have the right of first refusal. So if the county wants to go ahead and sell the property at a later date or lease the property at a later date, the Sedwanis by law would be entitled to the right of first refusal for the remainder property. If we go through a regular real estate closing, this will extinguish their right of first refusal, and we will receive a deed free and clear. Staff's recommendation is to approve the mediation settlement, and I'd be happy to try and answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Chair?
Is there any further questions for Mr. DeBrow? Mr. Fleischer?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Lohr. Anybody from the public wish to comment on the motion? Seeing none, Commissioners, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. All right, moving down to 15B, solid waste. 15B1, approval of the solid waste disposal district meeting minutes of April 4th.
2023, and 15B2, approval of the Solid Waste Disposal District meeting minutes of April 18th, 2023.
Move approval.
Motion by Commissioner Adams, second by Commissioner Fleischer. Anybody from the public wish to comment? Seeing none, Commissioners, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. 15B3, approval for continued laboratory services. Other than that, it doesn't say on the backup, but I assume that's for Geosyntec, sir? Reading what I got, it's not actually spelled out on the agenda item.
Good afternoon, Himanshu Mehta, Managing Director, Solid Waste Disposal District. So this is for our laboratory. Geosyntec collects our samples and does the reporting to the state. However, the samples are sent to a laboratory called Eurofins Environmental Testing, and we currently had projected about $35,000 in our budget this year. Due to the additional testing that's required with the evaporation system, we had to put some monitoring wells, additional monitoring wells on the property. So our laboratory costs are increasing, and so this is requesting board approval for additional costs associated with the laboratory.
Any questions of Himanshu?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Fleischer, would you make the motion?
Motion to approve, yes, sir.
All right, motion by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Adams. Anybody from the audience wish to comment on the motion? Seeing none, Commissioners, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. With that, I think we will stand adjourned until the June 20th, 2023 meeting. With that, I thank you, each and every one of you.